Okay, we're on. It's supposed to be Infinite Plane Saturn Day, but it's a little late. I mean, it's still Saturday, but we'll play that song on the outro. This is AutoHoaxer GTFO, Chief Crow. I'll put a link below. So I want to kind of pick up where I wanted to go to yesterday. And although we missed today, a lot happened in the meantime. So one of the things I was going to talk about was the evidence for simulation theory surrounding the Luigi Mangione shooting. And all of these evidences, not from us, we're talking about the propaganda messaging of this actor, this larper, live action role player. But there are some who've taken the conclusion that you're looking at evidence of a simulation because there's all these weird instances of the number, I believe it's 286 or something. But anyway, it turns out that every single one of those instances was erroneous. And a lot of people overreacted. So here's an example. Owen Schroyer says, "No effing way. We're either in a simulation or this is something else. How is this even possible?" And on this video, you have a number of instances where you see the number 286 is associated with the shooter, with the insurance code for denying a claim. And then there's a number of instances here. See, denial code, 286. 286 posts on one of his accounts. And I believe his Spotify 286. Anyway, it goes on and on and on with these 286s. And if you look at the comments, this has blown people's minds. Area code 286, 286 posts on X. So most people here responding are saying this is a simulation. That's kind of the go-to. And I didn't comment on it yesterday because we weren't here, but people are saying, well, maybe 286 means a sacrificial lamb. How things work, a brief history of reality. Here's a book that describes the world as a simulation. Which it may be, I don't know. I mean, I don't have any reason to think so, but what I am pointing out here is that this is false evidence, and this is not in support of us being in a simulation. This is a lot of people being wrong about a lot of things, but it was the fact checkers who went through and found out that no, these were all more or less arbitrarily chosen. Here's the Spotify account they're referencing. Not his. Somebody changed it after the fact. So this stuff was all manufactured and fake. But the go-to conclusion that many reached was this is evidence we're in a simulation. And this is Owen Schroyer from InfoWars. I mean, he served time for January 6th. So he's pretty high up there, very popular conspiracy theorist. But what they don't talk about is the fact that this is an actor and nobody died. It was a simulation. So I look at a lot of this stuff that we see as low-hanging fruit, clickbait, truther bait, designed to guardrail the conversation and keep it in the realm of discussing things that they can control. If we start calling things out as fake and run by actors, directed by the DHS or whomever, that gets too close to the truth. And they don't want truthers stumbling upon the truth. Truthers are truly just propaganda mules for alternative media. And I would even say that simulation theory itself has been a sort of sabotage. And we're talking about things that have consequences. It matters when people accept bad arguments to support something because maybe they want it to be true. For example, there's a lot of people who want it to be true that aliens exist and they have these craft and they're going to show up in some predictable way just like in the movies. And sorry, but there are no drones, just mass hysteria. But that's not stopping people from spreading this drone story. Let me go ahead and play a short clip here.
I just want to add a few comments on the reports of drone activity here on the East
This is from John Kirby, White House National Security Communications Advisor.
Coast, particularly in and around New Jersey. We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat or have a foreign nexus.
So he kind of dispels the idea that these are from a mothership that came from Iran. But you'll see it's being taken out of context. This is a cover-up now. Here's Laura Loomer saying, this has to stop. The post has been deleted. But what it did have, and Laura Loomer promoted this, it had airplanes landing at an airport somewhere in Florida. This has to stop. And there are numerous people coming out in favor of shooting at drones. Just shoot. If it looks like a drone, pull the trigger on it. I think even Trump threw something out there. He truthed something to the effect of these should be shot down. Now, this is from ABC 7, by the way. ABC 7 News had this report today. They're literally recording Venus. This is the planet Venus. And they can't figure out what it is.
You know, when things like this are happening, it seems everyone starts to look up, like my crew and I have been here in Mendham recording this video that you're looking at right now. We have no idea what it is.
We have no idea what it is. That is Venus.
If it's a natural phenomenon, because it could be, but this is why so many municipalities.
But the people watching it call it an orb. So orb is another thing that they believe in, orbs. Not clearly defined, but orbs. Then you have General Flynn, who's high up in the Q psyop, who said, this is 5th generation warfare. These drones and threats are real. He even goes on to say the White House is allowing this to happen to complicate the smooth transfer of power. So this is an inside job drone invasion, according to him. Now, there was one story where I believe somebody shined a laser at what they thought was a drone. And that's obviously an airplane. Like, that could get you arrested and it could get people hurt. Outspoken Samantha says, people are reporting that these car lights are flashing for no reason in New Jersey. And in the video, there seems to be drones above the parking lot. So this person is filming airplanes in the background, thinks there are drones above the parking lot with all these lights just blinking for some reason. Now, this is reminding me of the time that I tried to get people to show me video of the space station, and I got inundated with videos of airplanes. I had to change the rules. I said, if you're going to suggest you're looking at a spacecraft, I need 2 witnesses so we can triangulate it and determine that it's indeed above the atmosphere, 200 miles above our head, not 30,000 feet. Now, here's the thing. These are all Teslas, and this was a Tesla light show. So this Tesla light show is being reported as evidence of a UFO invasion or something like that. Joe Concha, and this guy has 267,000 followers. He's a Fox contributor. He says, just another Friday night in Jersey. The drones are flashing red and white. Shoot these things down. Trump was right.
2 more went that way. Can't be aliens. No one's traveling light years to take New Jersey. You want Springsteen, you want Bon Jovi, you could have them.
Now, didn't I say that when the aliens arrive, the left is going to embrace them and the right's going to call them demons, and they'll come out with their Trump flags and shotguns and Bibles, and they'll start shooting the aliens? Yeah, this is all going to come from right-wing agitators. This is why it's a Fox guy saying, shoot these things down. Trump said, shoot these things down.
But I just don't get why we just don't shoot these things down. This can't be too hard.
Very dumb. Mick West tweeted, Dear New Jersey, buy some binoculars. Thanks. Woman on Facebook proudly reports how her husband shined a laser at a drone, which was actually FedEx Flight 3926 at 4,000 feet. So they identified the very one. And this person contacted her and called her out as basically criticized her. And she said that her husband was in the Marines and he knows it was a drone or something. People are citing their friends. Like, my best friend's uncle is a drone operator, and he says these aren't airplanes. Breaking. This is from Alex Jones. What you're looking at is 100% human-made. We're witnessing the rollout of a massive deep state psychological warfare operation, and big stuff's about to go down. And that's a shaky picture of an airplane, which makes it look kind of triangle-y. It's like triangle lights mean UFO. I mean, come on. This is almost pathetic. It's almost sad. I mean, what are we looking at here? Visual illiteracy, hysteria. This is why people fall for psyops. So remember, the next time they laugh at you for calling something a psyop or a hoax, it's the same people who can't tell the difference between an airplane and a mysterious UFO. And the thing is, that shouldn't even be a consideration. You know, I call this maybe Bigfoot logic, as in you insert something into the conversation that has never been independently proven to exist. And then you say, well, maybe it was that. No, I'm sorry, you don't get a maybe here. You got to demonstrate these exist, and then we can put it into the realm of possibility. And I came up with this because I heard a couple of people talking about Bigfoot. The husband was a non-believer. The wife was a believer. They went out camping, and they heard likely raccoons. And the next morning, she reported they heard Bigfoot. So if you had a multiple choice, what would it be? You hear a noise out in the woods. Raccoons, deer, another human, or Bigfoot. Well, Bigfoot shouldn't even be a consideration. UFOs shouldn't be a consideration. There's a non sequitur fallacy here. They don't belong. It's a dishonest proposition. But anyway, the thing that Jones was pointing out, it was a C-17 cargo aircraft with its lights on. And somebody muted the video to hide the jet engine sound. So people are being deep-faked. They're deep-faking each other. Trutherville is auto deep-faking. It's like, it's the strangest thing. Okay, now, Goodyear Blimp actually retweeted this one. UFO Mania tweeted, bizarre-looking UFO caught in Miami. Hashtag drone sightings. And I can tell from the picture it's a blimp. And the Goodyear Blimp retweeted it and said, this is the world's most famous blimp. So what are we looking at here? Hysteria? Grifters? A little bit of both? The desire to believe run amok? Stephen Greenstreet said, my wife is flying into Newark in a few days. The fact I have to worry about someone in New Jersey shooting at her plane is somewhat depressing. Yeah, people in New Jersey need to calm it down. All right, we're joined by Matt X, Gematria 101, Frugal Snowbird, Ears Up, LAC, HLG, Isabel Ann, Roxy 322, X, thanks for joining. Girl says, General Flynn and his brother are 9/11 liars, traitors. Well, I look at them all as just actors on the world stage. And to single one of them out is to miss the point. You need to find who writes their scripts. And what we're looking at is, it's not an inside job with any psyop or hoax. It's actually just a scene in our prefabricated history, which they're acting out with a bunch of larpers so they can report it as real. Reality's been hijacked by a cult of liars. I can prove this. Joined by Reverse History. Thanks for joining. Ted Stryker 2112, Jay Diggs. Said the 33-second Palantir commercial aired at the Army-Navy game today and had a fleet of suicide drones out of a ship at sea. See, I thought that was something notable here. That the game, which I think was Trump there, wasn't J.D. Vance there, and Daniel Penny, they had a commercial, and it was advertising these drones coming out of a mothership. Just as it was suggested, people are seeing drones that came out of a mothership. Citizens start taking matters into their own hands, attempting to shoot down these drones. Now, thankfully, now this is insane. Charlie Kirk is tweeting it. Sad our government refuses to do anything and someone will get arrested for this. So Charlie Kirk, Turning Point USA, is not saying, don't shoot at drones, you might shoot an airplane. Or you might kill somebody. He's saying, it's sad that the public, that the patriots have to rise up and take out the drones because the government weren't. He's not even questioning the premise that there are drones and that these do represent some kind of existential threat. And he's literally, more or less, tacitly approving somebody shooting at an airplane here. Now, the good news is this isn't real. Somebody edited this video with the gunshots. Unbelievable. But the fact is, it's fake. He's reacting to it like he thinks it's real. And his take on it is, well, this is because the government. Mick West says, this is the stupidest and most dangerous thing I've seen on X in a while. This is a plane. Encouraging people to shoot them is encouraging murder. Yes, it's fake, but Kirk's encouragement is real. Exactly. Charlie Kirk is approving this. He's basically saying, hey, if the government doesn't stop these drones over New Jersey, you're all going to have to get your AR-15s out. You're going to have to go Rittenhouse on these drones. Unbelievable. These people are disgusting. All right, let's continue. The drone wars is kind of the big topic of the day. Let me play this clip. This is the personal assistant of Werner von Braun. Now, Werner von Braun, Nazi, good friends with Walt Disney. He was the guy who wrote the book Mars, A Technical Tale, about how the first person to colonize Mars would be the Elon. Anyway, von Braun had this end-of-life confession where he talked about how the one world government would consolidate power through universal threats. And he communicated this to his, in his last words, to his assistant. And here she is.
About why we shouldn't be putting weapons in space. What was most interesting to me was a repetitive sentence that he said to me over and over again during the approximately 4 years that I had the opportunity of working with him. The strategy that Werner von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials.
So this is where a lot of people think that they're going to stage an alien invasion because it came from Werner von Braun. Von Braun would have been fully apprised of the fakery in space. He's one of the space fakers. So I would consider this to be a narrative leak on purpose, perhaps sowing the seeds. And it's one of the things I call fake. If you can get people talking about alien invasions, well, then everything else is assumed to be true, leading up to that proposition. So if aliens are real, then all likelihood, I would say the moon landing is real. And space travel as described is real. So it's fake. It's like a prop within a movie. And if you get them treating that prop as real, they accept the reality of the movie. But regardless, he did say alien invasions and then something about, I believe, asteroids or space junk.
That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie.
Okay, no, he did say it's fake. So they're going to convince the public that we need space-based weapons to keep the aliens away. And already people are ready to shoot at them. So this is going to, and this ties right into Space Force in all likelihood. Cygirl says, no one I know believes in aliens or demons, only inflation and porous borders and crime out of control. Right, well, I don't know. Didn't they say the crime is down? Didn't the Fed say that? And can't we trust them? Isabel Ann says, the next lockdown bribery stimmy checks will be drone delivered. Yeah, that's something too. A drone delivery. This could be Christmas packages. But I don't even grant them that they're seeing drones. Not a single one. I don't think one anomalous drone sighting has been independently verified. And when this whole thing started, I said, remember Ukraine, where 30,000 of the most popular videos depicting this war were actually from video games? People can't tell the difference. It's just like when there was a motorcycle rally in like Greeley, Colorado or something, and people said the Hells Angels are heading to Aurora to fight the Venezuelan gangs that took over the apartment complexes. So you'd get these videos of people on motorcycles, and then it'd be like, God bless you, you're fighting the good fight. Thank you, Hells Angels, for helping to protect the jobs of American gangs. Well, it turns out there were no Venezuelan gangs taking over apartments, and that wasn't Hells Angels. It was just regular motorcycle aficionados taking a cruise. And people ran with this story, and the story was never corrected, and it was actually cited by Joe Rogan in his conversation with Donald Trump. Cygirl says, Pentagon psyops specialists write the scripts. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the scripts have been written like in broad strokes. I think they've written our future for the next 100 years, but they go into detail the closer we get. Jay Digg says, that's Charlie Kirk news account. Charlie Kirk has disavowed anything to do with the account. Yeah, well, whatever. Charlie Kirk is one of these provocateurs. He's not as bad as Nick Fuentes, but he has all the same opinions. Maybe he's worse. I don't know. I have to look into it. But I think Turning Point USA is a clear reference to the turning point in the Turner Diaries, which ties into McVeigh, right-wing nationalism, and this scenario that we're looking forward to. And speaking of, in that movie The Madness, which I've been citing recently because I watched it right before the CEO shooting, it has a 3D printed gun. In fact, I'll get into this. The 3D printed gun shooting the CEO, who incidentally represents Elon Musk. And there have been memes going around of Elon Musk with a gun pointed at him. I mean, it's insane how life seems to imitate the art. But as we know here, it is in fact psyops imitating art. But in that series, The Madness, there's this phrase, the turning point, brought up. The turning point was after the CEO was shot. It essentially provoked or provided an impetus for a lot of other people to want to take similar action. And we have seen something like this. I mean, look how many people are cheering the death of the CEO. It's actually a thing. It's not bots. It's not astroturfed. It's not fake. I've been maintaining for a couple of weeks here that there are no pose on the political left, no parodies of extremism. They don't need to hire people to say crazy crap. Like, you have to have feds like Nick Fuentes to say crazy stuff on the right. But on the left, there are a lot of people who just agree in principle with murdering CEOs. And they say it with a straight face. Like, they don't have any conscience about it. Okay, let's continue. Isabel Ann says, crime down in New York City except 3 zip codes. Yeah, I don't get all agitated about things that are likely fake, and the news media is a liar, if you haven't noticed. Corp Fiction says, new Santa movie depicting Santa mothership launching present delivery drones. So I'm convinced that this drone thing is a psyop. I just don't know its purpose. And they don't have to use real drones. It's all rumor. And rumor is what sells things. Rumor makes it happen. I mean, it's word of mouth. It's one of the oldest forms of spreading propaganda. And most people just carry it and share it, especially if they want it to be true. Mercedes says, not to change the subject, but you hear the Vatican's going to open Lucifer's tomb on Christmas Eve and they'll be live streaming it. Yeah, I did hear that the Pope is going to open 5 portals. So we're looking forward to that as well. I'll keep an eye on it. Joey, let's go. Yep, this is Saturn Day. I'll open up phones here shortly. I'm just catching up on notes. So Mick West was saying about drones, it's just people misinterpreting what they see in the sky combined with lazy sensationalist media. It's simple. A local aviation expert in New Jersey told me he was seeing things that were 100% not drones. He gave me photos of some date, location, data, DTL. Okay, so here we go. You're able to actually figure out what people are looking at by the time and date and location. That's why Mick West said to reject any claims that don't have that information. That's why whenever somebody tells me they saw a space station, I'm like, well, where were you, latitude and time? And most of the time they don't know. It's like, are you sure it was a space station? Maybe it was an alien and you got abducted and you have a missing segment of time. I mean, why do people have amnesia when it comes to these claims? If you see the space station, it's safe to say you had to have been looking at a very specific time. You would have been in a very specific place looking at a certain part of the sky. You wouldn't lose those details. But so many people would say, well, I saw a light in the sky. So at that point, I said, we can no longer have such a low standard of evidence. And I'm glad to see Mick West insisting upon some information along with the videos. Kevin Mooring says, Jack Black, new movie. He plays the Satan on Santa's Christmas. Yeah, I'm kind of curious to see it. It sounds terrible, but, you know, I like to monitor the predictive programming. And I want to point out, too, The Madness was #1, so I watched it. And before I watched it, I said, this will contain predictive programming for what's about to happen. I'm predicting predictive programming to demonstrate again that we have a model here. And it describes reality, describes how media actually functions, how the propaganda is woven into the entertainment, and how synchronized it all is. And sure enough, the movie contained multiple parallels to the real-life shooting, including the 3D printed gun. So there's a game called Thick as Thieves to be released next year. So next month. It's called The Hood. Thick as Thieves, The Hood. And take a look at that character. So the hood is a symbol, just like the Joker mask. These are all symbols, and we're talking about the class warfare model, the oppressor, the oppressed, and the hood and the mask. It's kind of become this symbol of the righteous social justice warrior, take from the rich, give to the poor. The Game Awards were sponsored by State Farm Insurance. A lot of interesting tie-ins to this psyop. Okay, this is kind of sick too. This is how you know. I'm talking about psychopathy. People radicalized by the news media and propaganda, and it turns them into murderers. This is what the rage virus is. This is disease X, but this is real. Elizabeth Warren had talked about this, and she said, yeah, it's bad that he died, but, and whenever they say but, she said, you can only push people so far. Okay, so when you have a bunch of individuals, now it's people. And now you have to, kneel before its power? It's like, what do you mean? You have to cave into the mob? She said you can only push people so far. And she framed it more or less as maybe not a justification, but a warning. Violence is never the answer, but people can only be pushed too far. This is a warning. If you push people hard enough, they lose faith in the ability of their government to make change. So she's justifying shooting CEOs just like the Fox guys justifying shooting at airplanes. Okay, we have plenty more to go off of here. This is related to this Luigi shooter. Brianna Boston, a 42-year-old mother of three, was arrested for threatening Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now, I don't think this is a hoax. I think this is an example of a psyop following the art which preceded it. Psyops follow the propaganda, but then life imitating the psyop. And I do think this one's legitimate. This is in Lakeland, Polk County. This 42-year-old was arrested for threatening her insurance company.
The nature of the threats, we would also be asking for GPS with house arrest conditions to protect the community.
With her head in her hands, Brianna Boston learned she would be held in jail on $100,000 bond. The Polk County judge adding the bond was appropriate given the, quote, status of our country.
All right. More justification. A Newful says, damn, why A-hole have more viewers than IPS? We have 256 live viewers right now. And if you count the audio streams, easily getting close to 300. And we should go higher. I think we'll get higher. Plus, we'll take some calls as well. All right, let me get through my notes for today. We missed yesterday, so there's quite a lot. So here's a group here, the Faux Moi community. I don't know who this is, but this is like some kind of a gaming community. It says, Luigi on screen at Bop to the Top Tour, a night of Disney Channel anthems in Boston. So I don't know what this is. It's some kind of a concert, but they're celebrating Luigi in the background, Luigi Mangione. This is a manufactured folk hero. And we've been vindicated pretty strongly in our analysis of this case. Day one, we were making the connections between this character and Joker and the Riddler. And in fact, let me bring this up next. So as we noted in our first discussion about Luigi, many were comparing his looks to the actor Dave Franco. And Dave Franco has been trending since the shooter's mugshot went viral. So Dave Franco does somewhat have a resemblance here. And that night I asked if any of you knew if Dave Franco had played an assassin. Does he have some role in his background that would lend some weight to this Luigi character? Because my contention is they manufacture these characters in our imaginations. They create these they basically merge a lot of things together, and they just superimpose it onto somebody in the news by the way they frame it. And this is how they build sympathy. This is how they manufacture a hero. This is how they superimpose onto him the idea that he's a righteous class warrior. Well, I said, hey, did anybody here have any information about this guy? And Cubstar found this. He played the Riddler in Young Justice. So why is this significant? Well, as I pointed out in my previous article, is the CEO shooter the Joker. I was describing how there are connections between the Joker character and the Riddler in particular, and their struggles with mental illness against the elite class, and how this ties in to this exact story. So I was pointing out these correlations between Joker, taxi driver Travis Bickle, and the Riddler the day before. And other news agencies, like I think it was Hollywood Reporter, compared him to Travis Bickle. Travis Bickle was the basis for the Joker. Travis Bickle inspired John Hinckley Jr. to shoot Reagan. And then think about this. The shooter Luigi shoots a CEO in front of that building, the Hilton, with 47 stories. And there are some numerical connections here. You know, the CEO, number 47, Trump. There are some allusions here when you get into the scripting here. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a manufactured character. So he played the Riddler. We examine world stage actors as though it's a movie because it is. Like most instantly viral big stories, the event is preceded by predictive programming and what I call proxies. So characters, fictional characters in video games, in movies, that serve as propaganda vectors. Now, there's more. Gun CEO killing suspect Luigi Mangione had a 3D printed gun. Now, as I pointed out, in The Madness, which was the #1 show right before the shooting, you had a vigilante taking out a billionaire CEO who was financing right-wing Nazis online, and they had a gun commune where Antifa-like radicals were manufacturing 3D printed guns. And here's a still shot. That's the Elon Musk character, the tech CEO with the gun to his head. And of course, in the movie, this was condoned by the masses. So here we go. Currently watching The Madness on Netflix. There's a scene where the main character meets the anarchist group, and they're shooting 3D printed guns. So movies create mythical characters who are then superimposed onto real individuals in the context of psychological operations in which they're role players. Luigi, I would say, is a live-action role player. He's not CGI. He's not a deepfake. He's not an MK Ultra patsy. He's not a victim. He's not a class warrior. No, he's a live-action role player. He's a larper. And the Dave Franco Riddler connection demonstrates how the program intentionally merges these fictional universes with reality. They're trying to get the masses to go along with certain narratives and stories. And they use these fictional universes, like the Batman one, as propaganda vectors. They merge these things. So Luigi has now officially entered folk hero status. And the fact that the movie star they compared him to played one of his fictional counterparts is pretty, I think, conclusive here. So you have this Robin Hood-esque folk hero. Here's the Hollywood Reporter says it plays out like a dark character portrait, taxi driver for the social media age. And this is just scratching the surface, but we have pretty much made these connections only to find out that they're actually reflected in what's reported next. So we're accurate, I'll say. Now, let me get into this, because there was something else, and I didn't get to this yesterday. I was hoping to, but there's a pretty big breakdown of what appear to be strange coincidences with the number 86 and 286 with this shooter. So here's a spread of it. His zip code. He was at McDonald's 286 miles from home or something. He had 286 people he was following on his Twitter account. Then you have National Insurance Awareness Day, 628. And then the insurance rejection code was supposedly 286. Then you had the mushroom Pokemon 286, and on, and then they have Proverbs 286. So they've built up a map of what appear to be conspicuous references to the number 286 with regard to this psyop. And I remarked on this earlier because InfoWars said, oh, this is a sign that we're in a simulation. Well, it turns out denial codes are generic from 1 to 306. So that's wrong. McDonald's is 279 miles from that location, not 286. The receipt was fake. There was a template online. Spotify was not his. The name changed there. So if you go down through these things, there is no 286 code or connection to the shooter. This is made up. But this made up notion was taken as proof that we live in a simulation. So what do you call that? I call that disinformation, because this is coming from top conspiracy channels, people like specifically Owen Schroyer, and instead of saying, hey, this is an actor, this is a LARP, this is a psyop, they're still operating under the mistaken presumption that a CEO was murdered. You see, they're not showing the public or their listeners how the public is being played. Cygirl says 86 is slang for getting dumped or beaten up or whacked. Right, but there was no 86 there, was my point. And people reacted to this. Jeffrey Jones says, anyone think the drone event was done to take the focus off the CEO shooting? I find it odd some young guy would have an issue with a particular insurance CEO when I don't even know who the CEO of my own company is. Right. It seems awfully personal, targeted. It requires some research to stalk the guy. I find it really unbelievable, to be honest. Lean Dion says, so it couldn't be a team of annoying writers. It has to be that we're in a big video game. Yeah, the go-to response for too many people is, this is evidence we're in a video game. See? Well, now what? Now what do you do with this? Because this is the type of stuff generally cited as evidence we're in a simulation. Now I have to go back and I have to ask people too. If you say we're in a simulation based on what we see in the media, can you show me one artifact, just one example of something in any movie or on the news that could only have been put there by an act of God or a higher power? Show me the Mandela effect. Show me the glitch in the Matrix. But until you can show me the glitch, you cannot insert the glitch as a possible explanation for anything. That's actually an example of maybe Bigfoot logic. Maybe it's a simulation, maybe it's not. No, you don't get to insert maybe Bigfoot, maybe simulation. So let me play this clip. This individual claims that the drones are coming out of the water.
Because they don't give off heat like regular drones.
Why do you think that is? We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction. Oh.
Where's the video of it? If I see 50 drones coming out of the water, I'm going to record it. So right now, my thinking on this is that we're looking at an intentional psychological operation. News Nation reporter says his view of New Jersey drones has changed since he witnessed them coming out of the ocean. He did not witness them. He talked to someone else who said he witnessed them. Doesn't even have a picture. One of the things we talk about a bit here is the idea of the commons of low Earth orbit and how it relates to the commons of cyberspace. And I've been describing Elon Musk as the leading polluter of the low Earth orbit commons and the leading polluter of cyberspace, another global commons. These are areas that we all share, and one person could ruin it for everybody. One mind virus super spreader can spread a hate virus that causes some destruction in other parts of the world. They made these arguments. And they've made the argument, too, that Musk's space junk is doing to space what X is doing to cyberspace. Not a coincidence. He is being set up as a fall guy for a couple of things. One, for free speech absolutism, but also for the influence of rich capitalism. Rich individuals shouldn't be able to ruin the world for everybody. CEOs. Too much power, too much influence, their carbon footprint's too big. But anyway, listen to this art. This is from the article from space.com, Tragedy of the Commons in Space. We need to act now to prevent orbital debris crisis, says scientist. We have to get serious about this and recognize unless we do something, we're in danger of making a whole part of our environment unusable. So just like Musk is about to ruin the internet, he could potentially ruin space. And he's the top polluter. And this is the concept, though, of the commons, is that they're trying to globalize threats and make the case that what we do here affects everybody, therefore we must all be regulated in common. Like the environment itself, Gaia, as a closed system, becomes one. And that's what environmentalism today is predicated on, the idea that what we do here disproportionately affects other countries, and their political systems don't allow them or facilitate them to do the damage that we do. So we need to tone it down. We need to regulate our free market because our activity is so destructive to the global. And this is also what they kind of tried to do with blood in 2020. They wanted to make it a commons where we all have to be on the exact same sheet because those who aren't are a threat to the whole. But space, cyberspace, commons, we're talking about the installation of like ubiquitous regulation. Of course, it's under false pretenses. Space junk is fake and mind viruses are fake. Tim Pool, days later, said, oh, the drones in New Jersey are just airplanes, LOL. And I informed him, well, I assumed it. We have an axiom here, but what I said here is I auto-hoax anything that goes mainstream. If there's a light in the sky, it's an airplane until proven otherwise. We actually have that as an axiom to get rid of fake claims of satellites and space stations. And imagine if everyone in Jersey had that in mind. Well, there's a light in the sky, but until I can prove it's not a plane, I'm going to assume it's a plane. Okay, we've received 100 messages so far. Pretty busy chat. 265 listening on the video and about 50 or more in the audio streams. By the way, if you're listening on the audio streams and you want to jump right in to the current live stream, go to infiniteplane.live. That domain will take you direct. U.S. Capitol Police are doing some kind of a rehearsal. It said, we coordinated one of the largest civil disturbance exercises with 1,000 participants, 16 agencies. USCP Joint Civil Disturbance Exercise. Now, I bring this up mainly because of the scale of it. 16 agencies. When I talk about psyops, we're not talking about local hoaxes, anomalies, some news crew is running some propaganda scam, tricking people. No, we're talking about dozens of agencies integrated in these top-down operations that the government is behind, ultimately, and the media is just one of its instruments. PSYOPs are the rule, not the exception. It says here they use the Secret Service training facility to... Okay, look, this is them. This is a simulated riot. A simulated riot with 1,000 participants involving Secret Service? Wow. It's almost like you could simulate a riot as a psyop. Didn't that happen? Oh yeah, that's right, January 6th. And the talk right now is that there are 26 feds that have been exposed that were part of January 6th. And you know what the foolish MAGAs think? Oh, that's proof. It was an inside job. Those 26 feds instigated the riot. It's like, no, you don't get to take away your responsibility. Every single person there has agency. They can't say, oh, we wouldn't have done it if Ray Epps didn't point to the Capitol. That is a terrible, terrible scapegoat narrative. But what they're missing here, it's not about the 26 federal informants there. It's the fact that it was probably 1,000 actors, that there were no live streamers there that weren't feds. There were no independent reporters on January 6th. None. In fact, there's a documentary, Woo's News covers it. There were some people there who were independent, and guess what? They were pushed to the side, and they couldn't make it to the riot in time because the riot started before Trump even said, run to the Capitol. And it's like a 45-minute delay because you got to walk to the Capitol. Paradox Penguin says, I'm here for the deprogramming. Thank you for joining. Yes, Lucid Streams, this is the drill at the Capitol. Cygirl said, all the MAGA idiots who followed the crisis actors into the Capitol. I would contend they were zero. My contention is that there weren't any useful idiots. There weren't that it wasn't a honeypot sting. That there were some real people who showed up at the speech, perhaps. But I'm saying it was a closed movie set. It was a large closed movie set. It was not a false flag. Baked Alaska was obviously a Fed. Obviously, he's saying, "Oh, this guy's a Fed," and it was like, "Oh, look, Ray Epps is a Fed because Baked Alaska said he's a Fed." Baked Alaska was the guy who coughed on Pelosi's phone. He was there to make MAGA look disgusting. And he was a Fed calling another Fed a Fed to hide the fact that they were all Feds. I mean, it's just obvious, classic, probably, misdirection tactic. So no, there's no way he was a useful idiot or a shill in the sense of like, well, I mean, he was a shill, I guess you could say that word, but I'd say a confidential informant. Same with the Proud Boys. You think the QAnon shaman with this Q sent me sign is a victim of the justice system and he was just fighting for America and he was being a peaceful protester? No, he was an agitator and just a walking, talking smear job to make everybody look crazy. The guy looks like he smells like roadkill and he's the face of MAGA all of a sudden. Yeah, Baked Alaska has a past. He was an online right-wing, basically meme vector, where you can find a lot of these federal informants. They all have the same talking points at the same time. And they create this manufactured consensus among the right. Nick Fuentes, obviously, Ellie Alexander. These guys are all compromising each other. They have dirty pictures of everybody in their circle. Ollie Alexander's a blackmailer, a groomer, a predator. Fuentes is complicit. And Alex Jones, obviously, is 100% a crisis actor. He's essentially a glorified crisis actor. And by the way, it was all fake with InfoWars getting purchased by The Onion. No, I think Roger Stone's going to get it. Like, InfoWars is not going away. 90% of the InfoWars brand is crying wolf about censorship and pretending like they're the canary in the coal mine. And what they're saying is just so bannable that they have to be shut down, that it's like critical information, you should know it. It's a selling tactic. I don't fall for it. Nobody's banning him. Plain Dakota says, drones on the East Coast near military bases spark demand for counter-drone tech, stricter rules, AI-driven tracking, big impact on defense markets. I could see that. However, we have not seen any evidence of a single drone. It's just rumors at this point. It's like the clown hoax from a few years ago. We have, periodic panics. And this is just a panic. But what makes this panic work is that a lot of people want to believe it. You know how many truthers are out there saying stuff like, I've been telling people about Project Bluebeam for years. Like, yeah, that's like just an old canard. But you've been warning us for what? This is like fake. There's no Project Bluebeam. It's just a bunch of delusional people. Maybe the word's not delusional. We'll say LARPing. I mean, come on. Calling in the Goodyear blimp. And then people responding to videos of people shooting at drones and applauding it. That's kind of low. All right, let's continue here. And by the way, they already Bluebeamed us. We've already been put into an alternate reality. It's far beyond tricking us with UFOs. I mean, they trick us with stuff every day. They've hijacked reality. They are manufacturing history day by day. Officials investigating drone landing in Hillsborough Township, New Jersey. The search is ongoing. Let me play this short clip.
As to a possible drone landing that happened yesterday. The search is ongoing right now in an area between or just off of Route 206 in Hillsborough.
Supposedly it's a downed drone and there's a 330-foot perimeter around it. But I haven't been able to substantiate it. I'm waiting for the community note on that one, in fact. I always suspend judgment on these things because the tendency is just to believe it and then share it. A foreign adversary flying drones over New Jersey, Drudge Report. These things are being hyped up by all the big channels. Okay, here's the deleted tweet that Laura Loomer's embarrassed about. This needs to stop. Multiple reports have emerged of 10 large drones over an airport in Queens. So here's the image of it, and Laura's like, this needs to stop. Yeah, this is LaGuardia Airport. Like, this is literally just airplanes landing on a runway. This needs to stop. And she's considered, at least by herself, to be this journalist. But this isn't journalism. Mango says UFOs are now called unidentified drones. They call them unidentified aerial phenomenon. Cope says probably to bring legislation to regulate privately owned drones in the airspace they're allowed to fly over. Yeah, that could be. I do think this is a psyop. Like, I don't think this is just a random phenomenon, a byproduct of the internet. But I think this might be brought up as perhaps as an example of why the public can't be trusted with social media. Turbo Nervo says, has anybody tried boiling vinegar at the drone swarms? Yeah, might as well try that. Girl says Laura Loomer's a click. Well, Laura Loomer is a provocateur, and she's been hyping up the Trump assassination predictive programming quite a bit. So I think she's definitely a provocateur. Now here's a good example of people reacting. I use the word pre-believe. People pre-believe in a UFO invasion. Like, they already believe it. So they don't even need to have decent special effects. They're going to 100% just believe it no matter what. Okay, this is it. This is a video. Enron's new CEO gets pie-faced in New York. So people have taken this as an example that we live in a simulation because it looks exactly like the Bill Gates pie in the face. Well, it turns out after millions of views that this is in fact a parody, not evidence of a simulation. It's a parody. So I'm just calling this out because I think that there's this tendency that's very obvious to me now, that the default to anything anomalous is to say that nothing is real. In other words, if what's on the news is we'll just say hinky. Is that the word that Rosie O'Donnell used with the Trump shooting? If anything on the news looks fake, reality's fake because the news is reality. That's the logic there. It's the conflating of the broadcast version of things with the real thing. But no, if you see a glitch in the media, it means the media is lying, not reality. Reality's not lying. The news is lying. And that would go with Occam's razor as well. Kevin Mooring says there are drones spraying chemtrail videos out. Yeah, I'll have to see that because chemtrails only occur when you're like 30,000 feet because they're a product of the colder temperatures in the rarefied air. And they're not a spray. What are they spraying is a loaded question. Joe Santos says, because our subconscious isn't so smart, what it sees on TV thinks maybe might happen, and that's why comedy is so important to make everything seem like a joke. Yes, and the powers that be actually target a great deal of their messaging to our subconscious, which doesn't have the same defense against lies and manipulation. It has this suspension of disbelief built into it. And I think that this is why it's so important that they inundate us with future events in the form of fiction in advance to get us to pre-believe stuff, to pre-identify with a character they haven't even introduced yet on the world stage. Jeffrey B. Jones says, we know UPS and Amazon are prepping to use drones to deliver packages. We know the government is behind all the psyops, and without a drone problem now, Congress and Trump's new administration would not have cause to make new laws to regulate space and use tax dollars to implement homeland security measures to control and monitor what will be happening in the space above our homes when that whole aerial phenomenon of the air taxis and drone deliveries start. That's likely because this is being promoted from Fox News, and it's like they don't care about their reputations. Like, I don't want to be perceived as hysterical, unreasonable, sensationalist. Like, I'm kind of a skeptic. And then you see these individuals just going with the hysteric, what is essentially a panic, more or less, a hoax, and they're going along with it, and they don't care about their reputations. So I have a feeling that they're being prodded, that this is an agenda. When is the Survivor season 47 finale? I just brought this up because we have noted that the movies and TV shows and everything always seem to foreshadow what's going on. So the CEO being shot in front of a 47-story building has significance because that was the building where Trump gave his acceptance speech, and he's the 47th CEO. So you find these overlaps, and there's already overlaps with the Joker character, Travis Bickle, De Niro, and the Trump shooting, which already happened back in July. So we've already established these multiple overlapping connections. The 47 thing really started with Trump back on July 4th, or 4 of 7, July 4th, that parade where Robert Crimo shot up the 4th of July parade, and he had the 47 tattooed on his head, 47 on his car. And then he had a picture of Lee Harvey Oswald on his wall. And he had been spotted multiple times at Trump rallies. So you have a guy who venerates Lee Harvey Oswald going to Trump rallies, and then he shoots up a 4th of July parade, and he's obsessed with 47. So when I saw that, and this was in 2022, I said, Lee Harvey Oswald has basically, I would say Lee Harvey Oswald has stepped on the stage. He's now a piece. He's in play. This character is in play. And we have seen since that time how this story has evolved, and the consistent messaging with Lee Harvey Oswald being reiterated multiple times. Remember the Super Bowl? Brock Purdy was compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. We were talking about this, where it just seems like Lee Harvey Oswald was on the periphery, but it was always gunning for Trump. And Trump had the 45 on the side of his hat, and at that point I said, hey, watch. Where Crimo has the 47 tattooed is where the shooter's going to hit Trump. And where did Trump get shot? Well, he turned his head, but that's where he would have been shot. So I don't think it's insignificant here that Survivor is going into its 47th. And I think it's highly significant that the 47th Super Bowl was the Blackout Bowl, and we're at this really contentious point, and a lot of the predictive programming has correlated with the idea of an incoming blackout, an EMP, for example. Tom Cruise will star in a supernatural thriller Deeper. This film will follow a disgraced astronaut on a deep sea dive, exploring a newly discovered trench where he confronts a sinister and dangerous force. So I have a couple of ideas about this. I think this may tie in to Revelation 9/11 and the Abyss, Abaddon over the Abyss, which all ties into James Cameron filming ghosts in the abyss on 9/11 at the site of the sunken Titanic. The symbol of the Titanic sinking correlates to the sinking of the West. There's a bigger story here. So it's highly significant that Tom Cruise is going to the bottom of the ocean. And then, of course, after this, he's going to space. So there's something here. And we had talked about this idea for some time, this correlation between 9/11, the sinking of the Titanic, and how it relates to the sinking of the space station, because these things are all part of a contiguous psyop. So there's just a development. We've been waiting to see what's going to happen with Tom Cruise. I'm curious as to how he's going to do his hair in space. Is it going to be hairsprayed, stiff, sticking up in all directions? Or is it going to be some kind of smooth CGI effect? Very curious as to what they're going to do. So here's that commercial. Army Navy 33-second commercial just came out today, and it happens to do with drones. So this further cements to me the idea that these drones swarming New Jersey are the result of a psychological operation, encouraging this panic, instigating it, promoting it. So you're looking at some kind of a mothership, a big ship rather, a warship, and then it's releasing drone swarms. Okay, so it says something in very light letters there. I can't really read it. It says something before they begin. Okay, it says, I think it says win wars before they begin. So there you go. This is from Palantir. And I think Palantir is the company of Peter Thiel. And isn't Peter Thiel one of the blood drinkers? Oh, yeah, Peter Thiel wants to inject himself with young people's blood. He's trying to look 18 again. Yeah, there's a couple of these. Is he harvesting the blood? I don't know if this is true or not. It looks like it's true by looking at him, but I can't substantiate it. But what are the odds? So what would you call that? I mean, really, what would you call that? The fact that this is an event where Trump is hanging out with J.D. Vance and Daniel Penny, and they have this commercial play at this time. Opportunistic? I don't think so. I think it's coordinated messaging. I call this concerted messaging. Do you remember I was talking about all the stuff with the ape, the rage monkey, and how it all tied in to the erection of that 90-foot statue in that video game with a million people playing that exact character? I said, these aren't coincidences. This is concerted messaging. Leo Freak says, it's crazy to see these people getting pulled every which way with these mainstream narratives. I'm glad I was paying attention these last 10 years. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, think about the wasted time. And it's not that they're wasting time because they're entertained, but they're not being informed. They're being conformed in order to go along with some future agenda. But what's more, they're in a state of not knowing, like they're confused or they're unsure. It's just speculation. And I'm not someone who just asks questions. It's like, I'm not here to just ask questions. Just asking questions is like a way that people shift the burden of proof to other people. Okay, here we go. This is somebody doing some work. It looks like, here we go, Senator Andy Kim, New Jersey. He went out with the police to observe reports, and guess what they found? He says here, after going out with the police to observe reports of possible drones, with the help of civilian pilots, we were able to do a deeper analysis, and we concluded that these were almost certainly planes.
Close, right? So this one's gonna fly over us right now. I think so.
I used public flight tracking tools to recreate the conditions. Okay, this is what I thought too. So in other words, it's planes. He says, I don't discount others may have seen drones, but everything that I saw was fully explained by flight paths. Press releases from federal agencies that don't share analysis of evidence and just reiterate statements aren't helpful in this moment. Yeah, they're doing a huge disservice to the public by just saying, no, it's not true, instead of providing reasons, because then it sounds like a cover-up, which I think might be intentional. Here's an old article from the Boston Daily Globe. Radio play terrifies nation. War of the Worlds all over again. Yes, Lean Dion, thanks for bringing that up. There was this a school kid, some kind of a school walkout. This is on Newsweek. High school students staged a walkout for Luigi. The main suspect in the murder of United Healthcare CEO was detained in Pennsylvania. The murder of Thompson captured the nation for its brutal nature and for the frustration many have for the health insurance system. One recent social media post showed it was purported to be an entire high school walking out in support of the shooter. The handle is, okay, here we go. The original video has been deleted. I'm trying to find out if this is real. It looks like somebody had created a fake video. Have to fact check everything these days. But I don't know. I'll have to check. Because somebody lied and they said that 100,000 Luigi hats were sold on Amazon because of, Luigi. Well, it turns out it was 100 had sold that day. But that listing in that post had 200,000 likes. So it could be true now. Like that person might have sold 100,000 Luigi hats thanks to a rumor that he sold 100,000. Like that's kind of an interesting marketing tactic, and I've been trying to figure out how can I use this. Like hoax marketing. I mean, what do you call that? Yeah, I saw that picture. Donald Trump shared a very, let's see if I can find it, unflattering meme of, is it Governor Christie? Chris Christie. He's out there in New Jersey. And it just had this horrible meme where a bunch of drones are delivering Big Macs to Governor Christie. And it's not really fair because Trump is pro-McDonald's now. So the idea that McDonald's makes people fat or whatever, I mean, come on. And then fat shaming. Anyway, that's Trump. And I caught some flack for saying that McDonald's is life extension. But my argument was that they're not trying to kill their customers. And if they could put life extension in the Big Mac sauce, they would. Because they'd get more money from you in the long term. But, I'm not telling people to eat it. I don't care what people eat. Just don't eat your neighbors. I guess that would be my only stipulation. By the way, Jaron, Witsit Gets It, McToon are in Antarctica. And there's a sun above their heads right now. And to my knowledge, it hasn't gone down yet. Now, there's a little bit of a tense situation. Will Duffy, the pastor behind this thing, the guy who paid for it all, describes how Jaron and Witsit want to be sure that they're not going to be recorded. They don't want to be humiliated. They don't want to be made to look foolish.
Now it's out. It's out in the air. It's out in the open. They had an opportunity to discuss it, and commitments were made, which I think are not too big of an ask. And so I'm very happy now. And so we're actually going to go all have a team dinner right now, which I'm looking forward to.
Anyway, we're waiting for some updates. It's going to get more interesting tomorrow. Now, listen to this comment. Leo Freak says, the Luigi thing is really popular with my normie friends. They even buy the numerology bait, even though they scoffed at it. See, what's ironic about it is that the numerology bait in the Leo Freak case is all fake. All the 286 stuff is fake. All of it. So why did they buy the fake stuff? We're saying this is a larper. This is an actor. It's a scripted event. And they're like, no, it's a simulation. Because what will they do when you show them that, all that numerology bait that you bought into isn't actually real? The event's not real, but that's a false explanation. It's like the default explanation for most people is to delve into the most esoteric, occult, unlikely explanation. Like they want to reach for the fantastical. Reach for the mystification. And my thinking on this, I believe, has been vindicated. Because what has simulation theory brought out? What has this alternative view elucidated here? Nothing. They haven't added to our understanding of the event. They don't subtract the initial presupposition that somebody died and there was an assassin. They don't subtract, they just add. Meanwhile, Metascript critique and analysis has decoded the story from day one. We have multiple reference points for concurrent programming. And we predicted the public's response to it, how this would be contextualized, how he'd be turned into a folk hero. And we have been 100% vindicated in our breakdown. And it has nothing to do with simulation theories. It has to do with analyzing media accurately. Luigi Mangione is a fictional construct. And again, earlier today I pointed this out, that his resemblance to Dave Franco goes deeper because Dave Franco played the Riddler. Okay, let's continue. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. HLG says cigarettes are healthy. Tobacco companies wouldn't want to kill their customers. Yeah, look, I don't care. Truthers act like, they're drinking their raw cow milk, eating raw meat, and acting like they've discovered something. But I think it's all faddism. I don't talk about diet here because I notice a lot of truthers when they run out of psyops they start talking about how they have a teaspoon of apple cider before bedtime, and they throw all these things out there, and it may be true, but I legitimately don't care what people eat. But the idea that corporations are all evil and they're trying to kill you, that's claptrap. And I don't buy it. I really don't. I think it's lazy thinking. But it doesn't mean I'm in support of it, and I don't believe McDonald's is life extension, but it's more likely that McDonald's is life extension than they're putting baby meat in the breakfast burritos. Like, think about it. Baby meat in breakfast burritos, life extension in the Big Mac sauce. What is more likely? Okay, let's continue. And I also don't take health advice from people unless I've seen pictures of them. Like, I need to see what you look like, what you can do. I want to see that you're a health expert. And I'm not trying to judge or body shame, but if someone doesn't look the part, I'm not going to take health advice from them. And anonymous people on the internet don't have anything to add to the conversation. John Stossel, who many QAnoners think is JFK Jr. in disguise, says that recycling plastic is a dead-end street.
Do you recycle?
For sure, absolutely.
Absolutely, everything I possibly can.
For decades, we've been told. Recycle America.
I talk about this a lot. Recycling is an act of contrition. It's tantamount to confession. You're confessing your sins to Gaia. You're thinking about your consumer decisions and which ones are sins. It's purely performative, it's theatrical, and it represents that you buy into the ideology. And it gives you a little bit of moral high ground over those who don't recycle. Now you're conscientious. It pleases Gaia. I would even say that recycling is an act of genuflection before the altar of the earth god, the recycling bin. And the recycling symbol is the symbol of death and rebirth. It's just earth god worship. That's all it is. It's pure theater. But I've known this for a long time. It's a huge farce. It makes people feel good. You can go to NBC News website and you can confess your climate sins. It's a religion.
Oh, ban plastic.
I think that's where we're headed.
No more plastic? But plastic often creates less emissions than alternatives.
And one more thing about this, because the people who believe in this stuff are the big government types. They believe in recycling. They believe it matters. But it should be pointed out that between 2020 and 2021, there were 57 trillion tons of PPE found floating in the ocean, entire islands, COVID islands. And you know who wore that stuff the most? The true believers, the recyclers. It's just kind of ironic that they are literally responsible for raising the ocean levels. I mean, 57 tons of PPE could do some damage. So here's something from Timcast. FBI has 26 informants at J6. It was an inside job. It wasn't an inside job. It was a staged riot. It was a propaganda simulation. 26 informants is misdirection. Anybody falling for that is in the box. But Tim Pool is in the box. His job is to keep you there. It's all about controlling your frame of reference. So even if you get the truth, it's rendered into a lie when it comes from your perspective. Leo Freak says, I have friends saying the manifesto is too obvious, so it was planted, but what about the other 20 manifestos they didn't question? Yeah, look, here's the thing, and I was going to allude to this. Your mainstream friends will most likely lean towards MSM+. It's not progress. Oh, the mainstream is lying. There must be something more to the story. So they add on to it. If you're adding on to it, you're adding crazy sauce. You're going into Trutherville. You're going into MK Ultra, mind control, simulation theory. You're adding a bunch of stuff onto something that hasn't even been determined to be real as presented. So I advocate the subtractive view, socially distance yourself from the story, get 6 feet back from the screen, wait a few days, get all the facts first. But if you run with the assumption that the story is true, but then you're not satisfied with the explanations you're given and you add on to it, you're deeper into the programming. And so most normies, when confronted with something that's obviously a hoax, they're not going to say everything's fake. They're not going to suddenly become aware of the psy war. They'll see a psyop and they'll add details to make it fit. Sort of like so many people knew the Trump ear wound was fake, but they don't know the news is fake. So it doesn't matter. They have that truth, this useful bit of information, but because of the context that they're in, the mainstream box, or even deeper, MSM plus, they are liars. You know, I describe the IPS as fake news wood chipper. We take the fake news and we just parse it, we chop it up. The world stage and the mainstream media, I would say, the mainstream media is like a reality wood chipper. It just decimates it, destroys all context and coherence. And if you're on the world stage, if that's your frame of reference, you can't tell the truth. You're a liar by default. Hate to say it, but it makes you a liar. Lean Dion says, people supporting Luigi, Atlantic labeled it normie extremism. Oh, I like that. It's like peaceful protesters. Luigi Mangione and the era of normie extremism. They're really contorting themselves. Now, to be clear, this guy is not a right-winger. He's not a MAGA. Now, you couldn't say he's 100% woke, and he may have expressed some sentiments maybe against wokeism in some ways, but they're trying to position him as some kind of a centrist, that he's a centrist extremist. And that could be the thing, because you know the Maxwell Azarello, the guy who set himself on fire on 4/19, on Waco Day, he was more of a libertarian centrist, where he was against both sides. And his messaging was, both sides are controlled by big money. It's a fascist takeover. And so he's not fully on the left, where they support the left, but he's somewhere in the middle, and he has no real representation. So his only recourse is to set himself on fire next to a hot dog stand. Similarly, Luigi here may be something more of a centrist. He may not be a hardline leftist, although I would think that he would be anti-right in terms of he's anti-CEO. So you couldn't put him in MAGA. He'd fit more with the Antifa, but a more extreme. This is a kind of a character they built up, and the other guy also had a manifesto. So I look at these individuals who are possibly going to be used because they have no recourse. It says, it's tempting to think in political extremes as those who've had their brains flambéed by a steady diet of oddball podcasters and fringe YouTubers and conspiracy theorists. Dylan Roof killed 9, and he hung out in white supremacist forums. You know what Dylan's middle name was, Dylan Roof? Storm. As in storm the Capitol. The storm is coming. Stormfront, which is the website that he went to. He was the first character I analyzed as potentially a total media construct, and I got started live streaming after studying Dylan Roof. Robert Bowers posted racist content on Gab. Brenton Tarrant's manifesto, Murdered 51. Shout out to PewDiePie. And he was copying from Anders Breivik. And by the way, this shooter, Luigi, gave the Unabomber's manifesto like 3 stars on Amazon. Says, Brian Thompson doesn't fit the mold. He posted on Goodreads and X and Facebook, spent time on Reddit discussing his back pain. Now, they did talk about how the system screwed him, his back pain. He couldn't have sex because his back was messed up, and that's part of what drove him crazy. They even suggest that he went a little crazy from ayahuasca, but they did throw in the mental illness thing and the victim of society, which describes Joker, which describes the Riddler, which is why it's significant that the Riddler was portrayed by Dave Franco, who has been compared to him. And Dave Franco is getting a boost in his ratings and traffic because of this. That didn't happen for me. There was that guy chopped the head off of his FBI father. His name was, what was it? Was it John Osmond? Who was the guy who chopped his father's head off? We called him Osmond as a joke. Justin Osmond. Anyway, this guy chopped the head off of his father. And Justin Moan. Justin Moan. We called him Justin Osmond. Because he looked like me. Now, I don't say this. Other people said he looked like me. But I didn't get a boost in ratings. Didn't help our live stream any. Decapitates his father because he's FBI, and he said the Moan's militia. And he had all kinds of quirky books posted on Kindle. Claims he had a stalker. So some people suggested that maybe he was based off of yours truly. I don't know. I don't see the resemblance. Maybe it's there. It's close enough. Okay, moving on. Tominoid says, Luigi's Mansion, 2001 action-adventure video game, has sold over 3.3 million copies. Now, has it had a spike in sales since this event? Adam Cook says, YouTube's not letting me thumbs up this stream. Oh, really? Yeah, I'm not surprised. YouTube and I, we're somewhat antagonistic. I mean, I play nice. Especially since we're monetized. It keeps this channel up now. People have made connection of Luigi's Mansion and Luigi Mangione. And there are some interesting connections with the Luigi hat, the green hat, and the Joker hair color being green. And how this is associated with this character. And I found other instances with him and the color green, Robin Hood, the Green Hood. So there is some kind of symbolism in the color. In addition to the character backgrounds that have been superimposed over this individual. But we witnessed the creation of a folk hero. An icon. Here's a professor at Penn State who's describing him as a, quote, icon. Hear the people sing, singing a song of angry men. This is the music of the people who have lost their slaves again. All right, yep, Penn State right there celebrating it. So we talked a little bit about the penny verdict. And one thing I would add to the penny verdict, I do think this is significant, is that you have the right-wing vigilante getting out as the left-wing vigilante goes in. And to the left, Luigi is innocent and Daniel Penny is guilty. To the right, Daniel Penny's a hero and Luigi's a murderer. So one group's hero is the other group's murderer. You see how that works? Totally bifurcated psyop, but the timing of the exchange is conspicuous. And then Daniel Penny hanging out with Trump and J.D. Vance, that's also unusual. It'd be like them hanging out with Derek Chauvin. Like from the other side's perspective, it's highly antagonistic. Luigi also had this Pokemon character with a green hat, and then he's hanging out in the green. So there's a lot of green stuff around him, and so it does correlate with the Luigi thing. And I think it ties into the Joker archetype and this green hair, as I put it in this article about. Now, this is something else too. I mentioned how the movie The Madness, the series The Madness, has the 3D printed guns, and it has the violent Antifa types, and it has the CEO, the billionaire, who's funding extremism online and influencing elections. Think about it. So in The Madness, which is the #1 movie right now, or was right before the shooting, this CEO is essentially credited with having stolen an election by influencing neo-Nazis on Twitter. Sound familiar? And then he gets executed at the end. He gets assassinated. And, of course, the series has the 3D printed gun. So Luigi uses a 3D printed gun, and he takes out a CEO, and then this goes viral right after. Libs of Blue Sky share this image of Musk with a gun pointed at him. Leo Freak says, what was his motive again? Oh, the guy who did his father in? I think he said there needed to be a militia to rise up and take out the FBI. His motive was kind of MAGA. T-Dog135 says the show can't grow. All the intelligent people are already present. I happen to think that we can expand our audience just by taking down certain guardrails. That's why I went after the Mandela effect and false flag theory. As we take down the false explanations that keep people in the alt media box, a number of people will come out of it. And my target now is eliminating the explanation for anything on the news as being evidence of a simulation. If we can get rid of simulation theory as an explanation for predictive programming, that's a popular notion. And we could redirect that misdirected body of thinkers into media analysis at this level. So I'm hopeful that we can metastasize our think tank in the coming year. Adam Cook says UK Channel 4 reports on Assad's drug production factory and a multi-million-pound smuggling enterprise. British East India Company went away. Ha ha ha. Have you commented on his drug enterprise? It's just now making the news. I heard that he started a podcast. I hadn't heard about his drug enterprise. Okay, continuing. I have a number of tweets bookmarked. If you want to follow me, it's IPS Think Tank. So we already went into this one. Owen Schroyer, we're either in a simulation. How is this even possible? So all these instances of the number 286 have been debunked. So anybody who cited this as evidence that we're in a simulation needs to do some soul searching. Because if you don't have at least one solid example of the simulation at work, then you can no longer claim that this is a mystical or supernatural phenomenon. We can no longer stand by the claim or stand on the claim that higher powers are engineering the fake news events, just because there's an absence of evidence. And here we have an example of people running with bad evidence, like people reporting airplanes as drones. And one of the things we do on this channel is we elevate our standards of evidence. And those who don't, or who can't, or who just won't, aren't going to last on the raft, because the raft is a self-sifting raft. Like, we don't have to kick people out. All we have to do is maintain standards of evidence, and people who don't want that won't stay in it. They'll just sink back down from the raft. They'll sink back down into the sea of irrelevance. Let's see here. Ryo says, maybe this is confirmation bias. Happens all the time. But maybe we're in the Matrix. Nope, sorry, not maybe Matrix. Maybe you can't treat the news as objective reality. See, that's the ironic thing. The simulation theory, the subjectivist perspective, is actually taking as evidence the TV, which they assume to be objective. So if the TV is objective and it presents a flaw or a glitch, now reality is subjective. It's completely illogical. The Matrix has you. Quite the coincidence, says Scott Summers. These are fake coincidences. More and more is coming out, says John Walker, that we are in a simulation. Things are adding up. There are no coincidences. We do live in a simulation. I'm going through people's comments on Twitter. So here's the list of things that they came up with. Luigi shot Brian Thompson, who was 6 months and 28 days. No, it was 6 months and 28 days after Luigi's birthday. He went to University of Pennsylvania, which was founded 284 years and 2 weeks before the shooting, which is 286. See, I say this is a reach. They are reaching for this. This is a reach. Then you have his 286 followers on Spotify. It turned out to be fake. I don't think this is coincidence at all, says Mediocre Rebel. Someone said Elon Musk's birthday is 826, so that adds to it somehow. The question is not, is this a simulation? It's how do we get out of it? Right. This guy says, I can't get past the cringe cuts and facial expressions. Yeah, I ignored this because I couldn't get past the guy's facial expressions. The video uses an appeal to incredulity in the form of a guy having these jaw-dropping facial expressions whenever he sees the number 286. But I went through these comments, and I don't see anybody saying, well, maybe the news is fake. No, it's reality's fake. So again, you see what I'm trying to draw the attention to here is that if the news is fake, it doesn't mean reality's fake. That's the go-to explanation because the base assumption is that the news is objective. No, you got to remove the presupposition that news is objective, that it's completely malleable and fakeable and full of lies and special effects. So no, those are not drones over New Jersey, and we do not live in a simulation. So here's Jaron. Let me get back to this really quick. This is Jaron live in Antarctica. Time for a paradigm shift or something. What's going to happen?
Get a little better view. Still can't see it. That black mountain there. So you fly in between those mountains.
Portal Complex says 286 is the not approved code from health insurance. No, it turns out that the number for the not approved or denied insurance claim is any number from 1 to 306. So even that is wrong.
And then they took us in a car or a little, whatever it's called, like a little tractor. And we came down this way.
So not a lot's happening down there. They're just waiting for the sun to set. We'll check back with our friends in Antarctica tomorrow. Lucid Stream says, isn't demanding proof of higher powers while assuming man did it without evidence a logical consistency? No, man did do it. Man made the TV. Man recorded it. It's human beings. Like, there is no doubt about that. Like, it is established that the media is a product of man's handiwork. It's not nature. It's not just appearing. There is no aspect of what we saw on the TV reportage regarding the shooter that is even in doubt as to its origin. Man did all of it. It would be logically inconsistent to ask, well, which part of this was put there by God? Or which part did Jesus or Thor or Hell 9000 influence? Like, no, if we're invoking higher powers, we're being logically inconsistent. We're being illogical. It's called the divine fallacy for a reason. Now, if your contention is that the Luigi Mangione thing, if your contention is that that's a simulation, you have to bring the evidence. If you think it was inspired by God or a higher power, the burden of proof would be on you since you're making the extraordinary claim. I'm making the non-extraordinary claim that news is created by man, that propaganda is inserted by man, that we are living in a world of things and people, and that we record each other doing things. Like, I don't have any sort of confusion. I'm not on the fence. I'm not ambiguous about this. I think it is objectively true. So we don't have anything at all to support that it's a simulation. We can say it's not. I mean, what I'm saying is, I guess, I mean, if you want to call in and debate it, go ahead. I mean, I'm open for it. But what I'm saying is that you have to provide evidence. Like, if I'm going to accept your premise that we have to be open to it being a simulation, then I have to open the door to Mandela effects. Then I have to open the door to every theological concept of how this place works. Like, well, what does the Bible have to say about this particular news event? What does the Quran have to say? Are there any Mandela effects to consider? So if we open the door to the supernatural, we open the door to insanity, to incoherent argumentation, to non-theories. I would even say that simulation theory is not even a theory. I think it's in the realm of theology at this point. And that's for the lack of evidence. And the only evidence people have are things they see in the news that they see as glitchy. So no, I'm going to have to go with simulation theory has to be bunked. I don't even have to debunk it. But if you're a God believer, I'm not saying that there isn't a God, but I'm saying that it would be intellectually dishonest for you to say that this news event was caused by God. Man didn't do that, God did it. That's intellectually dishonest. And if you're going to say man didn't do this, the simulation did, you're being intellectually dishonest. And I think simulation theory is cognitive sabotage. It's like the biblical flat earth model. The biblical flat earth model had a lot of people set up to believe something illogical. The divine fallacy made it possible. And I said from the very beginning, we shouldn't let that be a starting point. You have to prove the dome first, but nobody wanted to prove it first. They just wanted to assume it to be the case. And now where are they? They're lost. They took a bad premise. And similarly, I kind of think we're on the same point where simulation and God are analogous concepts. We're talking about higher powers here. So if you're an advocate for higher powers, if you're advocating for a religious thing, that's fine, but you can't use that as evidence for anything. You can just say, hey, as a general picture, I believe we're living in a God-created simulation. Yeah, that's fine. Just don't say your God-created simulation can be used to explain something mundane here that could be better explained by man, by natural phenomenon, by things that we already observe and test. It would be out of place. If we're talking about the weather, do we need to talk about the simulation? No, we're talking about things that we can verify, things that we're observing, things that are objective. So I'm saying let's keep this objective. If you want to make the argument for higher powers, you don't have to. You can believe. You have to be, accepting of the limitations of how far you can take a belief with no evidence as far as convincing other people, but you don't get to insert that as an equal proposition as to what could be causing this or that instance. And I only harp on this because predictive programming is predictive programming is a form of propaganda. And for 2 decades now, people have been saying it's caused by higher powers. And I'm saying that explanation failed. We can go ahead and leave it alone. We can move on. That explanation has failed. And if you want to say it's not a failed explanation, then it's on you to provide one simple artifact, one example of predictive or concurrent programming or media coincidences that could only have been there because of a higher power, where you can rule out man as a cause. And so far, nobody has provided anything even close to that. Yet, we are consistently demonstrating our grasp of what is going on here, and we are consistently finding that we're right. I predicted the madness would have relevance to a future news event immediately after because it was the #1 movie, and I was vindicated. And we find this to be the case every single time. So at this point, as a think tank, we've moved past the idea of trying to shoehorn a supernatural explanation for anything when it comes to the news. Leo Frigg says, the fact Jaron wants to prove it now is laughable. He just needs 10 years of conference grifting first. Thank you, Aaron Foster. Appreciate that. The IPS appreciates the support. Portal Complex says, has anybody seen the Bonanza episode where the new teacher was conditioning the kids on globe and gravity? The elder ripped her a new one. Haven't seen it. Lucid Stream says it could be both. Yeah, the best you can do is this. So if you have like a model of the world that you accept as real, like let's say you believe in God or a simulation, you're a simulation theorist. You believe we're in a simulation. Okay, so now everything is a byproduct of the simulation. Everything's caused by God. But you can only take it so far. You can't say it's both. Like let's say you have something happen in your life. Let's just say a mild car accident. You can't say God caused you to do it. You have to take responsibility. Even if God made you, even if God made the world, you can't use the divine excuse. You can't say that the simulation caused this. You can say we live in a simulation, but this event was caused by this guy or is created by these people. You can't take the responsibility out of the hands of those people and then ascribe it to a higher power. You can't say that James Cameron didn't write the Titanic, the simulation wrote it through him. So it would contain predictive programming for 9/11. Like, I don't think we can do that. I think that we can rule that out. So to your next comment, none of us would be here without higher powers. Isn't that evidence enough? No. Again, it's not. It's actually intellectually dishonest if you're going to say that your higher power is causing the things that we're talking about here. We're talking about fake news. And we're talking about evidence of media being scripted. There's no reason to insert a divine cause in something like this. It's actually way out of place. And it doesn't, I'm saying it's intellectually dishonest. I'm saying that you can claim to believe that the universe is created by your God, which is a very subjective idea. I don't know what God you're referring to, but let's just say it's true. You can claim that, but you can't use as an intellectually honest argument that God was responsible for white noise mirroring a real train accident. Like you can't do that without overlooking what would be the more likely explanation, that the directors did it, that it was written. So we can agree, I guess, we can agree on the premise that the world was made by God, but we can't agree that God causes what we see on the news when it's obviously orchestrated by man. That would be, again, dishonest. And I shouldn't have to reiterate this, but I'm saying that simulation theory does not explain predictive programming, and it's been muddying the waters for 20 years. For 20 years, truthers have missed the totality of the fakery because they deflect to some higher power explanation, which is a cul-de-sac. It's an intellectual cul-de-sac, and it's a non-answer. Oh, thank you, I'm not. You purchased some art. I'll be sending that out. I also have 3 copies of Autohoaxology 101 signed, and I'm working on a follow-up book. So here it is, Autohoaxology 101. The follow-up is going to be our meta-scripted and news-bent reality. It should be out before the end of the year. 1900 says, darker forces influence mankind to commit such acts. See, that's what I'm talking about. The darker forces thing. Like, prove it. Show us the darker forces. And I can show you the very mundane political utility behind all these events. And then what's more, you're saying commit these acts. What acts? These are simulations. I would suggest here that the simulation theory, the revelation of the method, the dark forces people would have a point if the events were real. But since we're talking about fake events, you don't actually have a point. Lucid Stream says, the level of precision and foresight required to coordinate predictive programming exceeds human capabilities, in my opinion. Again, that's divine fallacy, and we have proven again and again. Like, for example, the timing of a Netflix release with this shooter. I don't think that's beyond man. And if you're saying it's beyond man, you're actually invoking the divine fallacy. And I would weigh our evidence against that presupposition. It's like Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently developed technology is indistinguishable from magic. Doesn't mean it's magic. Or if you had a magic show and the magician does 20 tricks and you know how he did 15 of them, but you can't figure out 5 of them. You're like, well, how did he get that quarter out of that kid's ear? Must be real magic. No. You don't go to, it must be magic for every magic trick that you can't figure out just by looking at it. You say, it's a trick. I haven't figured it out yet. But if your go-to explanation is magic, then you have not suspended judgment. You have prejudged it as magic without enough information to give you the right answer. So I would argue that you are wrong if you're suggesting that man is not behind predictive programming. Not only are you wrong, but if you're seriously saying this, then what you're signing off on is that every instance of predictive programming is us being witness to a divine power. That all these connections that I point out between Travis Bickle, the Joker, De Niro, and Trump, that this is God, that I am seeing something beyond man working through the movies. Like, if I believe that, I would be blown away. I'd be like, look, you burn your Bibles. You want evidence of God and divine authorship and divine inspiration, look no further than Netflix. Netflix can show you God right here. Let me prove it to you. And I'm saying that, so your argument would therefore be that all of my evidence for a metascript is proof of God. And I'm saying that no, it's not. But that's what you're actually signing off on. So if you're saying predictive programming could not have been done by man, your argument is that media is divinely inspired. And I would say that's a pretty tall claim to make. And if that were the case, I would be watching TV all the time. And I'd be like, well, hallelujah, praise the Lord. That just happened on Netflix. Rebel Ridge just happened to Tyreek Hill. It's like, nope, not true. Not true. Wrong answer. We can move on to the right answer. And the right answer is what we get from the objective analysis of the facts. Yeah, Octavius Prime says man and AI are behind predictive programming. AI doesn't exist. And AI is just another way of saying God. It's another way of saying simulation. Just replace simulation with Jesus. Jesus caused this Netflix TV show to come out 2 days before this travesty with the football player getting pulled out. You'd say, what do you mean? What does Jesus have to do with it? What does AI have to do with it? AI doesn't even exist. What does the simulation have to do with it? So no, this is I'm actually pushing back against it because I know it's wrong. It's illogical and it's intellectually dishonest, and we have better explanations. Unmitigated Mind says the best explanation in real terms, it's sorcery and magic at work. It's the world stage spell casting. And it builds on the sorcery that came before. Some say art itself is sorcery. Okay, my answer to that is divine fallacy. Unless you can do magic. And I was trying to get some interest in this idea. Somebody prove magic to me. If you can do a spell and demonstrate that your focused intent in a magical ritual is causing real world effects, if you can prove that to us right now or any time, then I'll take that into consideration. But you cannot insert magic as an explanation for what we're seeing on TV until you can demonstrate that magic exists. So maybe magic, maybe Bigfoot, maybe Sim. Sorry. Those are all non sequitur fallacies. Yeah, phones are open, 505-510-4226. Esteban says, AI mixed my guitar short. Yeah, what people call AI isn't sentient. It has no agency. It's a glorified search engine. It's an information sorter. It's a labor-saving device. I use it all the time. I use it in my legal work. I use it for writing. I use it for everything. My art, all the time. But at no point do I think that I'm actually communicating with a sentient being. It's like you shake a 8-ball, one of those 8-ball things. Like, who am I going to run into tomorrow? And it gives you some kind of an answer. Yeah, it's like an oracle. And if you ascribe sentience to it, you're falling for some, like the mechanical Turk. For like 100 years, people thought this mechanical Turk was beating them at chess. No, it's some guy inside of a compartment moving an animatronic. Or the Optimus, what is it, the Optimus robots that Musk has? They're talking to people at this dinner party. No, that's some guy with a headset on behind the wall there. AI isn't real. You cannot say AI is the cause of anything. We have to also stamp that notion out. Serene says 119 listeners. We actually have 350 on all the channels. We have 350 on video and another 50 on audio. Lucid Stream says, for example, I'm referring to two connections between Back to the Future, Trump, 9/11. To only see man did it without solid evidence isn't good enough for me. Need to allow for unprovable but rational beliefs. Well, I would point out that Back to the Future is not an anomaly. That there are more than a dozen examples that have Trump and 9/11 tied into it. Because Trump, like the Twin Towers, is something that was pre-written into the script. And they're playing it out real time. And I have solid evidence of this. You don't have solid evidence that more than man did it. You have to show, like, which God are you referring to is what my starting point would be. Man wrote the scripts. The director even said Biff Tannen was inspired by Donald Trump. He specifically said that. But if you're going to assert that God is making the movies, which God? Some trickster God? The devil? The demiurge? Jesus? Like, who's behind it? Because you're presuming that there's a divine inspiration in these movies. And that's a big deal if it's true. It's big if true. It's big if true that predictive programming represents divine influence, because unlike the Bible, we can actually point the stuff out real time. Shed Dog says you give man too much credit. No, you don't give him enough credit. He brainwashed you. Man brainwashed you. Man brainwashed your entire family and everybody you know. You were born into a simulation. You were born into a mental map of the world that doesn't comport with the real thing for brainwashing purposes. Man dominated you mentally in a mind war, conquered you. Man fabricates your history day by day with fake news, and you're powerless to do anything about it. So you say I give man too much credit? No. No, look where you are. And look how recently you came to the conclusion you arrived at. And we don't even have a full picture. So no, we have solid evidence that everything on the news is created by man. There's no evidence of God in the movie theaters, in the cutting room floors, editing these films. None. Even if you want to say that God made the universe, you can't say God directed this movie. You can't take man out of the picture. But does anybody here have which God, which entity, which higher power is it? Because just saying it's a higher power without citing which one is kind of vague. But I would also point out that there's a reason why I'm insisting on being honest about this stuff. And when I say being honest, I mean being true to logic, to the intellect. Because mysticism is antagonistic to the intellect. And the world stage is built on mankind being put into subjective belief systems. Subjectivism. Mysticism. Mysticism has been weaponized to prevent people from finding out what's going on. So if we're trying to un-mindfuck society, we need to get rid of their programming. We need to tear down the bars. And I would say that every logical fallacy that you haven't diagnosed, that you still fall for, that you use to supplant your arguments, is holding back the conversation, holding back understanding. Case in point, simulation theory has added nothing to our understanding of the Luigi Mangione story. But the Metascript breakdown has been vindicated. Not only that, it's been predictive. We are already comparing him to the Riddler before we found out that his celebrity lookalike played the Riddler. Thank you, Aaron Foster. He says, do you believe in a higher power? I'm sure you've heard the millennial reign of Christ and Satan's short season. Yeah, I don't believe in biblical prophecy as anything more than propaganda. I would allude to rule number 9 in Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. The threat of the thing is worse than the thing. The threat of the nuke has been used to shape geopolitics for decades. The threat of God's judgment is an easy thing to repurpose for any cult, any group. But it never comes true. It never happens. So I don't believe in that. Now, is there a higher power? Sure, but I don't adhere to any religion, any man-made religion, any of the traditional religions. I don't, because I look at mainstream media as religion. It's the dominant one world religion. And I think that it is built up, it rests upon the shoulders of the previous religions. I look at CNN and Fox and all the holy books as the same. It's old school fake news. Like by analogy, I would say Old Testament, New Testament as a framework for the world would be analogous to just trusting the news, as in this is our official history and this is our news day by day and our projections for the future. Like these are complete world views. What came before, what's happening now, what's going to happen if we don't change our ways. So I look at these as reality filters. And everybody who filters their lived experience through this book and takes this label has a certain worldview. If you have a Christian worldview, you believe in certain things. If you're an atheist, you believe in certain things. If you're a believer in the mainstream worldview, you have a certain frame of reference. And I'd say that you can actually look at the mainstream media as a religious paradigm. And space is like a replacement heaven. It's more universal. It's a universal religion. Nasatology is something else that I would call it. But as far as the higher power question, it's like, what's the relevance here? And when it comes down to it, I learned in recent years, I don't criticize Christians like as a monolith. I don't think there is Christianity. Like, I don't think there is such a thing. I mean, there's the the definition of it, but can you really define it as a religion? No, it's too personal. Every person defines it differently, and true Christians don't go to church, or say the real Christians don't go to church. The ones in church say the ones not in church are heathens, and everybody's name calling. Everybody says everybody else's religion is wrong. And that's the one thing they're all right about. They're all right about a couple of things. They're all right that every other religion is wrong, and they are right that we probably do have a soul. Like, I can agree with them on that, but I completely reject their interpretations. And I'm not joining any of their clubs where they can tell me what to think. Lean Dion says, media deconstruction is straightforward with auto hoax methodology. This simulation MSM plus stuff goes around in circles with no conclusions. Yeah, the simulation theorists have had enough time, I think. We've given enough time to the synchro mystics. We've given enough time to those warning us about the revelation of the method. But where their theory falls short is that we're talking about fake events. And why would the universe predict fake events, for one thing? But another thing, here's a really good analogy that explains my issue with this. Let's say that it was announced that, hey, computer hacking is way complex. It's so complex that man couldn't possibly hack computers. All computer hacking is done by gremlins. Oh, that's nice. If you're a computer hacker, no one's going to come looking for you. No one's going to hunt you down, since they assume it's so complex only gremlins could do it. Now, what about the reality hackers? What about the programmers, the metascripters, the newsbenders? Oh, they don't exist. No, it's a higher power. You know who that benefits? Them. You know who wrote the script that the people writing the scripts are actually a higher power? The human script writers. Thank you, Ted Stryker. Handing out blue wrenches here. Cameron Kaplan, Kiddo Core, Roxy W, Jennifer Reeves, Nicotramus, Brock Till Payday, Salty Siren, Conscious Reality, T-Rex in Space have all received, and Dynamo Hum. Scott Rankin all received the Blue Wrench Lodge. But look, I don't want to kick a dead horse. We've dealt with this whole thing long enough, or buy oats for a dead horse. We killed simulation theory as an explanation for fake news. It's dead. Mandela effect is dead. False flag theory, dead. And I think this is important because these theories don't have anything to stand on. And if somebody wants to defend them, yeah, let's debate it. Let's debate it. So those people who still fall for those things can arrive at the right conclusion, which is media skepticism will deliver consistent answers and results. Cope says, Shed Dog blocked me, tells me we've already known this troll. Possibly. But look, I'm all for debate because it's about getting the right information and arguments. It's not about being correct and proving other people wrong. It's about shining a light on why they're wrong so other people can work their way out of it. We killed chemtrails. Chemtrails, Mandela effects, false flag theory. These things have all been decimated by the think tank. These are all guardrails. And one more point. If you say that we're in a simulation, then you have no right saying the Mandela effect doesn't exist. Because the Mandela effect is a byproduct of living in a simulation. And the Mandela effect has been debunked. It's been explained away as nothing more than false memories created by retroactive interference by the interrogator, the false binary propositions. Lean, this is an interesting one. Lucy, I've heard this one before too. This is a common one, and I understand how people arrive at this, but I don't know how somebody could stand on this explanation in 2024. It's just a program, one of many programs. Embedding programs is a tool to condition human behavior to ensure the stability of the simulation by creating self-fulfilling prophecies. See, I understand that because a lot of people were trying to grasp, like, how do we reconcile these non-coincidences? These aren't coincidences, but there are so many of them. Why are so many news events mirroring what just happened in the movies? And it's the same media consumers watching the movies and then watching it on the news. How do you explain these coincidences? And so people say simulation, God, all kinds of magical explanations. And that has been, again, the standard truth or orthodoxy for 20 years, the simulation guardrail. But simulation theory has, one, been debunked, two, it's never been bunked, it's never been demonstrated, and three, no one has one single piece of evidence to use it as an explanation for fake news. So I'll leave it at that. You can believe we're in a simulation, but you can't use it to explain anything. Okay, let's see here. We are about 2 hours in. We'll follow up with Antarctica. Let me go back to our list. So no drones, just mass hysteria. Miles Mathis has an article on the shooter, which has some good points. Elizabeth Warren says the CEO murder was just a warning. People shining lasers at drones. ABC News thought Venus was a UFO. And Owen Schroyer thinks that Luigi proves we're in a simulation. I think we've covered all of that pretty well. If some simulation theory wants to have, or theorist wants to have a formal debate, I'll set aside an hour. 5 minutes your side, 5 minutes my side, audience questions, back and forth. And I think it could be fruitful. I have yet to find a Mandela effectee willing to debate me for some reason. They say to avoid me. They call me the God blocker. Captain Coldblooded says, Tim, you're starting to look at Alex Jones' son in the face. Anything you want to tell us? I haven't seen Alex Jones' son. Is he fat? Portal Complex says, Dark City was a documentary. Yes. Yes. Actually, Dark City is actually part of the subtext of Megalopolis, the design authority. Yeah, phones are open. Kane the Cool says it's programmable, but it's not a simulation. It's the real deal. Yeah, I'll go so far as to say this. There's a mental simulation. We all have a mental model. And the mental model that we collectively share as the consensus has been turned into a manipulatable simulation. As the Dune Messiah said in the Dune, Frank Herbert, they're not mad, they're trained to believe. Because belief could be manipulated and knowledge is dangerous. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, caller?
Oh, shit. I've been trying to call for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought you had them off. I've been listening to you for a long time, probably like 2015, maybe late 2015, 2016. The first time I listened to you, do you remember like the Eddie Bravo conversation with Eric Dubé?
Oh, yes.
Like,
Eric Dubé.
And you were in the chat, and like Eric Dubé was like, he's like, some people believe this, and then he like literally shouted you out. He's like, some people believe it as an infinite plane, and that's the first time it clicked in my head. I was like, oh, some people aren't going this way or that way. Some people are keeping their mind open, and I was like, that like blew my mind. I was like, holy shit! Like some people aren't just, because so many people went, we're flat or we're round. And you were like, wait a minute. And that's where I was at, because I was like, well, if we're going to jump from here to there, if I'm going to believe this for so long, why would I go to immediately believe this, like, instantly? Right? Like, that makes no sense.
Exactly. It really seemed like that was the default was, okay, if it's not this, we have to go with this. And I thought, well, these people are pushing a biblical model, anti-science, and they haven't tested it. And my immediate thought there was there needs to be a counter to the contrived counter, what I now call the anti-anti position. So the Infinite Plane Society was always an anti-anti position.
Exactly. Well, for me, it was like, well, if we're good, everybody I know, my whole family, all my relatives, we believed in the globe, right? And all of a sudden, I'm starting to unquestion that. Like, the first thing I'm doing is I'm hitting the brakes, right? Like, well, wait a minute. Like, right? Like, they were, like, everybody's like, well, it must be this. And I'm like, wait a minute, let's think about it. And it was, you were the only person, really, the voice of reason was like, because you weren't saying anything. You weren't saying, no, it's this or this. You were saying, wait a minute, let's think about it. And that was the only obvious conclusion to come to, right? Like,
Yeah,
we got to think about it for a minute, guys. Like,
I think the way I
we're
described it was,
automatically flat earthers, and we're gonna fight. Like, now we stand on this when our whole that's just ridiculous, man. That's just ridiculous.
well, there were all kinds of people trying to come up with models at the time. You're like, okay, this person says it's a disk in space. This person says dome. This person says it's hollow. So you had all these competing models. And I said, if you're constructing a model before you're getting more information, you're putting the cart before the horse. It's premature. That just because you lose the globe model doesn't mean you need to jump into an alternative model. And the problem with the alternative models, specifically the dome, is it's another closed system. It doesn't even leave it open to the possibility that there's more land. So I thought, you're not even changing. So we shouldn't even be looking at models yet. We should be looking at getting more intel. And then also we're dealing with the fact that the source for our information is highly questionable.
Well, especially since the people who wanted to go to the next model, they weren't even leaving the house. Like, at least NASA was claiming to go out of the world. Like, those people wanted to come up with a map in their room. They didn't even want to go outside, right? They wanted to be like, well, this is the flat. There was like, everybody, well, this is the model. And like, they didn't even leave their house. And like, all of a sudden, we're going to believe them? Like, at least NASA was pretending to go outside.
Yes. And we were always getting behind various endeavors to explore and get more information from Mad Mike and exploring again. But the approach of building a model first is what I would call MSM plus. And it's typical truther stuff where they don't like the answer they have, so they add a bunch of stuff that they can't verify. And I'm saying to be a skeptic is to be the subtractive. You have to take the subtractive view. You have to say, well, what can't we verify? Let's eliminate that and get more facts. So you can eliminate the globe because you don't trust NASA. You can eliminate the model rather they've given us and the images they've given us, but we can't throw something in until we get more information. And if right now they were able to prove without reference to NASA unequivocally that we're on a ball, it doesn't automatically mean that whatever NASA has depicted is true, because they could be hiding land. They could misrepresent it. The moon landing's still fake. So we're still dealing with fakery, the same problem we've always been talking about.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, and that was the one thing that really turned me on to what you were talking about, because it was like we need to take a step back, and there's so much information from what Alex Jones, David Icke, NASA, all the way to the extremists of whatever, the flat earth. Like, we need to take a step back, because I'm not in a rush to figure out, to plant that flag and be like, now we got to, one of the early things was to our detriment was like, we need to build numbers. We need to build numbers. We're going to get all these people on our side. And that was the stupidest thing we should have done. Like, trying to wake people up was the dumbest thing. Like, we don't need to wake people up, and like, we need to figure it out for ourselves. Like, at the end of the day, like, I don't care like how many numbers on this side and that side. And you were really the one person who everybody, like the Globers telling you you're wrong, the flat earthers were telling you wrong. And I was like, well, this guy must be onto something, because everybody's telling him he's wrong and he's not even claiming to be right.
Oh, they were chasing celebrity endorsements. And I was like, okay, look, it doesn't matter if a celebrity says it. It's a losing proposition. Like, you can't just wake people up and make it happen by mass agreement. There has to be some information that causes very intelligent people in the know to blow the whistle. And as far as incentives go, most of the Bible flat earthers said, oh, it's just scientists trying to hide God, which I think is a ridiculous explanation, because science would determine the truth. It's just the fact they've co-opted science and they've managed to infuse it with some special effects. But it makes sense to me that the same people who lie about who fake the news and fake history can't be trusted to make the maps. So I'm under the impression that the entire operation is hiding what the world really looks like, round or flat. It's almost immaterial at this point.
Yeah, I agree. But the main thing that made me want to call in, because I'm not really trying to argue the flat or the globe, or really even the God construct, the simulation, all that. I really just wanted to touch a bit, because it's really piqued my interest, because this Luigi guy, like, this was something that was below my radar. Like, yeah, it's the same thing played over and over. But I see a lot of people around me who have been just not interested in any of this stuff that I've been saying or really talking about. And like, they're really, really biting this like hard, and I'm not really sure why. And they're coming back with the same shit, like, you know, the 286 and all these numbers. And like, I thought the Trump fake ear shit was going to be like, you know, the arm of God, all these biblical verses, like, look at it's the next thing. And like, they were all like, that's horseshit, that's crazy, that's, you know, conspiracy. But now they're spouting this same stuff. And now why are they buying it all of a sudden? Because it's like on Twitter, like I don't get it, because it's being artificially blown up. Like, how are they buying this now? It's the same thing. He got caught. He's so smart, 200 IQ. He popped off in the, you know, in middle of the city. Then he disappeared in Central Park, hid the gun, and then he shows up in McDonald's, got all the IDs and the manifesto and the gun on him. Like, it's all contradictory. Like, why are they buying this? What about this story?
Yeah, target marketing, and it has been effective, and it resonates with their political ideology. I think also part of it is, so I think there's symbolism here. He shoots a CEO, 47-story building. We made these Trump connections, but Trump just won. And so the Trump haters feel aggrieved. And now they have a street-level Joker-esque hero who rises up to fight the system. And so I kind of think this is a perfect psyop targeted to the right audience, and that's going to make it stick. And so I think it's completely engineered, and it shows how powerful they are in terms of scripting our reality. And I think they also deal with the realm of conditioning us with predictive programming. And I think that this character embodies the Joker. He embodies the Riddler. He embodies the oppressed class. And he's a rich guy who set aside his own privilege to fight the system. So they engineered this Robin Hood-esque character. And I think that they essentially brought a mythical character to life, and we're witnessing it, though. It's total mind control, and it's successful as hell.
It's just crazy to me, because it's, you know, it's like, one of the things you say is like perfectly bifurcated. Is that what you say when it's like perfectly polarized?
Yes.
Is that the term you use?
Oh, yes.
So it's like, and I've been pointing that out, but, you know, I'll tell my friends and family, be like, look, isn't it crazy how anti-vax, pro-vax, anti-abortion, pro, it's always split down the middle, anti-war, pro, and now it's specifically, again, it's like the dude is fighting against the system, but he comes from a privileged thing, like he was denied healthcare, he has plenty of money to just do it anyways. It's like split, you know, it's in these Bible verses, but yet you told me that I was crazy when I pointed at the 33s and all this other shit, and now like, how is that? It's just blowing my mind that they can't even think about, you know, even the basic thing, like the manifesto was released, like there's an ongoing court case, like you say, Scooby-Doo justice. How is it always fucking Scooby-Doo? Like, I know people who have been through the legal system, and they're like, that doesn't work like that. No, it would never work like that. Like, that'd be crazy for all that info to be released like that. The dude's so smart, and he keeps all the shit on him, and he's going to McDonald's, and like they ID him. What is that story? Like,
yeah, I thought so too. I see the Scooby-Doo justice thing. Like, you're talking about a murder. The body's not even room temperature yet, and now we're getting the clues he dropped, which leads us to his manifesto. And since when do they publish a terrorist's manifesto and create sympathy for the terrorist? That's not how you generally treat these things. And they treated this individual like, oh, he deserves to be platformed. They platformed his entire message right away. So no, this struck me as Scooby-Doo justice. It was a single episode, easy to digest. Children could get the story. In fact, a fakeologist said that his, you know, people talk about their family members' reactions to things, and he said his daughter remarked on the cute shooter. Like, since when do children pay attention to psyops? Like, this one has deeply saturated the public.
Yeah, that is actually the same. But the thing that I didn't know, because I don't, you know, I come from the, you know, like I said, I've been listening to you, and you know, I'm not saying like I'm listening to you like a whatever, but I've been aware of what's going on. So this has been under my radar, because I was like, this is kind of a stupid one. Like, it's not even that crazy. And then I hear these regular people around me like, the numbers are adding up, and he got caught with the manifesto, and like, and then they're saying it was a patsy because they planted it on him. But all these other I don't know how to speak, like these mass events, like they always have manifestos on them. They always have it, and then you never, like you bought it every other time that like added to the evidence, but now you're like, oh, they planted on them. It's almost like I can't even understand how these people think anymore. Like,
Well, you know what's interesting?
I knew
is
they're dumb, but
when the Boston bombing happened, I heard about it from a neighbor that I wasn't even talking to. They were talking to somebody else. And then on this one, I was at a dollar store, and I overheard somebody telling the cashier who didn't care, oh, they caught the shooter at a McDonald's. So this story really spread like wildfire. And I don't know why this one in particular, but it's not usually the case. Normally people are apathetic and they're not paying attention. So it just seems to me that this one, for some reason, has been targeted to a lot of people who aren't generally paying attention. And I would have ignored this one. I thought it was boring at first. But then I remember I just watched The Madness on Netflix, and I started to see, wait a minute here, the narrative in The Madness is the vigilante versus the billionaire CEO. And so there's this Robin Hood narrative, the class warfare stuff, and it all comports with the Joker stuff. And so I started to see, okay, this is a fictional construct, not a real shooting.
yeah, exactly. And like, I feel from like knowing that, just to seeing this play out, and it took me aback. I'm like, wow, like you cried when I told you this event was fake, and now you're saying it's about to be a revolution because of numbers, and dude is aiming at, and then they talk about, well, God is telling you that the American healthcare system is corrupt? Is that what he's saying? Like, we all knew it was fucking corrupt. Like, he's shining through he's breaking through the dimensions to say the American healthcare system is corrupt. Like, who didn't know that?
Right. Yeah, the mystification of these stories. Like, even Trump knows that he scored a ketchup on his face. He knows that was fake. And yet, he talks to his audience and he's like, it was at 6:11 p.m. And that's from the Bible, armor of God. So even he's tapping into this because the God believers are now adding into this other element to what happened that day. So they add on to their lies with mysticism, with religiosity, and these other notions that are just story, narrative, emotion-driven reasons.
Uh-huh. Do you think, okay, so this is another thing I'm thinking. Do you think that, okay, so we know you and JL and I'm like we seen this in the Trump, you call it the ear piercing. That's fine. But and I honestly thought that would have been bigger than what it was. It really wasn't. But do you think that this is feeding into, hey, these things happen, assassinations happen? Like, do you think on the back end they're going to be like, oh, it did happen to Trump, and now look at the numbers were there with the armor of God, and all, like, do you think this is just feeding more into these things do happen and putting it in the average conscious mind that assassinations happen on the street? It could happen. Do you think this is feeding into when this happens again, the big one with Trump? And I say the big one, but I know it's all bullshit. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you think this
definitely
is just more into that?
Because when Robert Crimo showed up and he shot up that parade, I said, okay, Lee Harvey Oswald's on the stage. They're creeping towards this goal. And that's why I think it's notable that the shooting of the CEO has the 47 connection. Because I think this is conditioning us to accept it as normal so that when it happens, nobody questioned it. And not only that, but they're getting people to pre-agree. Think about it. People already pre-agreed and pre-sided with this idea. They didn't just suddenly think, killing a CEO is actually a good idea. No, they already agreed with that. But they hadn't spoken it aloud because it hadn't happened yet. But when you watch a movie like The Joker and you side with the villain in a movie like that, you're giving tacit approval to, kill the cops, burn down the system. This is righteous. So I think what they do with the conditioning, with predictive programming, is they get people to agree in advance to future agendas. And these are things that are antisocial, so it's safe to do it in the movies. But in this case, yes. So the public is ready. The public will sign off on something against Trump. I'd have no doubt about it.
Yeah, like it's like, who's the biggest CEO, of the country? It's Trump, the president. Who's the biggest CEO? And a lot of people are either, they're for him or they're against him. And I don't know if against him is that violent, like you say. I feel like they're a bunch of pussies, but like they'll cheer from the sidelines. But I do think it's just priming this to be acceptable. Like, yeah, these things happen. Like, you know what I mean? It's like for him to get like, where's the security? Even that, what was that clip you showed of the guy getting hit with the pies? Like, well, what were those security guards doing? They hop out of the thing and the dude's right there. Like, there's no security. Like, is that normal? Both security guards are fired. Have one security guard for a rapper, and that happens, and they're fired. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, they threw out some theories that maybe he set it up on himself. Now check this out. Synchromorpheus posted this on December the 5th. So 26 days before the shooter shot the CEO, this article came out in The Guardian. And a lot of these magazines have foreshadowing. So predictive programming, instead of being a mystical simulation thing, it's a literary technique. It's called foreshadowing. So The Guardian had this. It has Trump in crosshairs. Pretty obvious, like you're looking through a rifle scope at his head. And it says, incoming Trump presidency threatens millions of American healthcare plans. They're not going to renew concepts of plan. This is Trump's ACA coverage thing.
That's interesting.
So this came out before. So this is already saying hostility is being felt towards Trump because he's going to get rid of people's healthcare. And they're using a crosshairs. And this is a month before the shooting. And again, the movie The Madness came out right before, the day before. #1 trending movie, and it's got a CEO killed by a vigilante, and the movie has 3D printed guns. And what did Luigi have? A 3D printed gun.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think that the most crazy thing to me is like the normie aspect slowly merging into this, but being diverted into a different lane. Like, these things happen. You used to call people who told this shit was going to happen are conspiracy theorists. Like, I remember telling people, hey, Trump's going to get shot and like he's going to be, I remember people, they'd be like, that's crazy. Another one of your conspiracies. It happened, and they're like, all of a sudden they're like, boom. Yeah, of course he got shot. He's the most hated man in the world. It's like downloaded instantly into reasoning it. Like, what?
Yeah, 1 minute they're like, that's crazy. The next minute, like, yeah, we all saw it coming. And I noticed right before 7/13, we were talking about it because of the predictive programming, but suddenly every right-wing pundit was saying, I'm afraid Trump's going to get it. Alex Jones is saying it. General Flynn is getting it. And I'm like, there's a chorus here. And that does create the sense that it was expected.
Yeah, that's definitely. But it's just interesting to me to see I don't like to say the hive mind or the NPC mind or anything. I don't really like that term because I know people who believe that shit who are very good people, better people than maybe even me. Like, but it's interesting to see how the wand has been, like, we're going this way, we're going this way, we're going this way. It's kind of frightening, man, because it's really getting to the point where they're shouting for deaths of CEOs and like their number. They would have call us crazy, and now they're talking about simulations, and this is all.
Yeah, they're the ones.
That's insane, dude. That's insane.
Look, we're not the crazy ones as media skeptics and inactivists. We're not the ones being agitated by what's on the screen to sign off on violence. Like, we're not being radicalized to violence by the TV. But as far as the hive mind thing, the way I look at it, very simply, is that the dominant paradigm has everybody programmed to accept the mainstream worldview. And the mainstream worldview just has a lot of presuppositions built into it. Conspiracy theorists exist on the fringe called MSM+, where they believe all the mainstream stuff, but then they add on with a bunch of conspiracies. Our position is MSM-, subtracting the presupposition that the screen is telling the truth. So it's not so much a hive mind as it's just conformity out of habit and tradition. And it's not an intelligence thing. It's just a situational awareness thing.
What does the tradition just kind of go with? Okay, this is acceptable. Maybe there's like, younger people within your family who are kind of, going the route of, especially media, TikTok, Twitter, and all. Okay, this is kind of accepted, and like we're sitting out here on the fringe, like, man, we've been watching it. We've seen the numbers on every single damn operation they've played, and like we're tired of even talking about it because it don't get us nowhere. But they've done this forever. The numbers are lining up with the Bible. The numbers are lining up with the 33s and the 42s, and they've done this with everyone. It's almost like they're just throwing it out there every time. Like, will they bite? Will they bite? Will they bite it? Like, finally, they're getting the big one. Like, they're kind of not the big one, but you know what I mean. Like, they keep doing
Yes,
it.
they're getting a deep level of engagement here, and I think it's probably all intentional. They're puppeteering people, but that's why I think what we're doing is unique, and what we're doing is, I think, the right approach, which is we form a separate think tank that doesn't automatically buy into the alternative media. Because a lot of alternative media people are like, yeah, I don't trust the mainstream, but you trust alternative mainstream. And these are both shadows on the wall projected from the same projector. And that's the main separation here, because we're not going to convince anybody. They're not going to trust us. They're going to trust the screen. And they're going to trust something when it becomes like acceptable to. So I think by separating as a think tank, we're going to accelerate this conversation. And eventually, I think a lot of people will see the sense in it, but there's no way to convince them at this present
Yeah,
stage.
I agree with you. I hate to cut it, but it's like I want to say two things. Like, one, I agree with you. Like, eventually we're gonna, I don't even say eventually. Like, we already are. Because there is no, if we get enough group up eventually, if we convert enough people, like that was something that I thought in 2015, 16, 17, 18. We need to get everybody. But it has nothing to do with that. Like, because you can't force that. You can't make anybody believe that. And it's not about that. It's like what you said. You need to inoculate your mind. Like, I can't do anything, but I can fortify my mind. Like, I sit here unaffected by it. Like, I can be like, wow, that's crazy, but I'm really not that affected by it. Like, I wasn't affected by what happened in 2020, like because we were basically laughing at it. Like, we were showing people, like, we were basically laughing at all that stuff. And that never would have happened if I went to, started thinking about this a long time ago. And it's very difficult. But another thing, can I just say one more thing?
That's a great point you made. I mean, we're divided between believers and skeptical knowers, and we have a buffer. We don't just get dragged into things so easily anymore. But go on.
Yeah, and it is kind of, I kind of forgot it, but it's been like tough though, because it's just like, of course you get fought every single step of the way. I remember telling people this news story is a fake, and like having family members cry and tell me I'm crazy and like I'm empathic or whatever, and it's like, it's literally the opposite, because what is bigger is what's happening to all of us. Like, it's like, that's hard to get through, but when you break free of it, it's just like, it feels better, and it really did. So, okay, so what do you think about the whole final experiment thing?
Okay, so the final experiment right now, it's going on, which is great. And Jaron, Whitsitt, they're all there right now. One, it's not an experiment. It's an observation. It's an observation.
Absolutely.
But, so...
They love throwing that fucking word around like they're doing something.
Right. No, all they're doing is they're making an observation. So from what is purported to be the South Pole or Antarctica, whatever, they're observing the sun for 24 hours, and if it doesn't set, it would therefore falsify the flat Earth model, which I contend there is no model. But it's premature.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you. Like, there is no... I mean, that's basically, it comes back to what I said, right? The flat or the round, and you're like, wait a minute, could be infinite. Space could be pixels. Like, I don't know that. I just don't know that.
Right. So all it does for me is it says that, okay, well, they may have a win in terms of the best model that explains observations may in fact be the spinning ball. But it does not mean the news is real. It doesn't change the fact that NASA's lying and misrepresenting what we're on. It doesn't validate even low Earth orbit or orbiting satellites or any space travel whatsoever. So it doesn't move them any further towards their goal of like, selling me on NASAtology. But it does, I think what it will do though, is all those who are wrongly focused on their flat Earth model can refocus at the model building capabilities of mass media and how that's the central issue here.
I think that what it does for me is like, I really kind of thought about it for I would say I really thought about it. I didn't think about it even for a fraction of a second when I originally thought about it in 2015, 2016. But, I thought about it. It's like, it just doesn't, to me, it's like, if I was going to believe in it, then I would believe in all the textbooks, everything I thought from NASA, the government, all the governments of the world. So all of a sudden some fucking YouTuber is going to prove it. Now that's my world belief is based on Jeranism. Like, that's the dumbest statement you could fucking say, really. Like, I don't give, like, Jeranism to me is Globebusters Jeranism. Dude has been fucking weird since 2016. Like, that don't mean anything to me, man. Well, that really doesn't mean anything to me.
He showed us multiple ISS transits in front of the sun and moon. So he's part of the fakery department. He's part of it. And Witsit gets it, makes a lot of decent arguments in a way. He has a great understanding of logical fallacies. But he never talks about the media fakery as a primary concern. So you cannot have an intellectually honest debate about Flat Earth versus NASA's version if you're not talking about NASA's use of special effects. And I feel like they're trying to avoid the topic of special effects because that would bring down the ISS. So I kind of feel like this whole debate is a false dichotomy. It's a misdirection of energy and resources and time. And maybe it was designed this way. Maybe their whole objective was, let's hijack this conversation, distract it from the media fakery and worldview building, which is, I think, what NASA's really about. Not space travel, but controlling our inner space. So they distract us from that with a fake debate, and they end the topic because they kept it centered on this model versus that model. So I kind of think it's a psyop, a limited hangout, and now they're just closing it off.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. But I don't think I think for anybody who's been paying attention since 2015, 2016, like, it's Jeranism, bro. It's like Mark Sargent, I don't know if he's there, but like, we've been through this. Like, I don't trust you. I trust you less than I trust NASA at this point. Like, maybe you're the same. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's same as if Dearth was going to come out with his map and be like, this is flat. It's like, even though I lean one way, I would still be like, I don't believe you because you're Dearth, dude. You're fucking weird. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't question shit. Like, like you said, Jeranism, he doesn't question ISS. He doesn't question, they don't question media faker. What about all of these other things? What about the fake news? Like,
yeah, that was the line.
It's just like Alex Jones. Like, I trust you. I don't trust you. Like, you say a lot of things. You helped me, but I don't care what you come out with your worldview tomorrow. If Alex Jones made a new InfoWars, we bought it back, and this is the worldview. I don't want to give. That means nothing to me.
Yeah, look, if they don't auto hoax, then they're not up to speed. That's what it comes down to. I mean, even like, okay, Mark Sargent, a lot of interesting content, talks about flat Earth. However, when it came to the Vegas event, he was suggesting that some people died. That, they had to kill some people that knew too much. So anybody who still adheres to the notion that they kill people in events are maintaining this without any evidence. And that actually maintains the structure of the alternative news version of a mainstream story. So that's the bloody guardrail. So if they're not full-on auto-hoaxing at this point, if they're not exposing the psy war, but they only notice certain psyops, then they just need to catch up. They're behind the times. I'm not saying that they're feds. Like, I'm not saying Flat Earth Dave's a fed, but their methodology is old. It's aged. It's
you don't have to be a fed, but
yeah, they don't have to be. I mean, it's either they're feds or they're just behind, and they need to update their mental map of the world to include the fact that psyops are the rule and not the exception. That they don't kill people in psyops. These are actually key points to understand. It's a paradigm shift. But if you don't have that paradigm shift, you're always going to be stuck in the mainstream box. You're always going to be confused. We're not confused. And I'm glad that we've been able to make this distinction. And I'm hoping that.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, I'm hoping this Antarctica thing.
Like, we're not confused, man. Like, that's the main thing that I was kind of, listening to this, like, the Luigi shit or even the Trump shit, which should have been bigger, in my opinion. Like, we're just not confused about it. We aren't confused about the newest, biggest thing. Like, when I like to think about it is, like, the American people are 5% of the population of the world. Like, we're just not. They replay the same bullshit over and over. We're just not confused about it. And that, I think, when you say a mind war, what do you say? Mind war inoculated? Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Mind war inoculation.
And I just sit back and it's like, maybe back then it was like the flat Earth or mainly the psyops were happening, and it's confusing because even when you start to get it, you want to talk to your friends, you want to talk to your family, you want to try to. But now it's like I sit back and I'm like, damn, that's got to be rough. Damn, they're trying to put that puzzle together. They're still trying to figure out that shit. Like, that sounds like a lot of work.
That's what the IPS is for. And recently, about a month and a half ago, I managed to get my original channel reinstated, just kind of on a whim. I woke up in the middle of the night and something told me to email YouTube and apologize for misinformation. And I did it ironically, but they reinstated my channel. And the IPS channel from the very beginning has been a think tank with certain rules, certain standards. We're like, hey, we're not trying to tell you what to believe. We're trying to arrive at a methodology for processing media so we can come to know what we can know and then disbelieve what is not believable, but be informed about why we don't believe it. And we've maintained this as a think tank. So you don't need to talk to your friends and family about the fake news. You don't need to inform them. You have another click here and we're the cutting edge and we'll stay this way. And when people are ready to catch up, they can follow us pretty much.
I agree, man. Like I said, I've been here since the beginning. I've been here since Toto was kicking people in the head with his rant. I've been here since day one, bro. I may not use the same name, but I've been here forever. So
well, I appreciate it.
I get what
really
it is. I remember late night meetings, late night, fucking all that shit. Just figuring it out, man. And I really do appreciate that. It's just funny to wake up in these, these times and be like, damn, they're thinking about this.
I like
they're
it.
So lost.
I
man.
like
they're
these
so lost.
These big psyops that saturate everywhere. It always brings people back. So it's like, I know if there's some major psyop, all the people who used to listen are going to find us again because we're always at the cutting edge and that's where you'll find us. So if there's something big happening and you want to know what's the most up-to-date deconstruction of it, the IPS think tank and other media fakery analysis should be the go-to. But I think it's great that you're calling in and it's been this long. And
I've never called in. I've never called in before. I've been listening to you that long. I've never called in.
I appreciate it. I love first-time callers, especially from the original think tank, because you're a founding member of it. Because that was the days when it was impossible to have a coherent conversation until we made everybody a mod, passed out blue wrenches, and then filtered out those who weren't being honest participants, the trolls. And if we didn't have that as a foundation, we wouldn't have been able to build this oasis of skepticism and objectivity.
Yeah, and I do like that because it, like, I like how you say, like, you're pro. What do you say? You're pro, anti, and anti. How do you say that?
Anti the pro position, which is the mainstream, but also anti the anti. So you have to be anti-pro and anti-anti.
And that's how I look at your quote-unquote cult. Like, you're pro, but we're all. It's like we're here because we want to agree with people, but we're here because we don't agree with fucking people. Like, we don't even agree with you, but yet we all agree to disagree with fucking everybody else. You know what I mean? Like, because we just, at the end of the day, we want to figure it out for ourselves, really. And we kind of all, I mean, we're the rest. We're the ones that are left here. Still like, okay.
Yeah, and we didn't get scattered. We didn't get lost in agendas. We didn't all become Q or I spell crack pipe with a Q. We're not hitting the Q pipe. We're not running up the Capitol Hill. Like, I think this think tank's maintained its integrity, and it's because we do have a point here. And our point is maintaining a concurrent version of reality that doesn't automatically believe all the fake stuff and doesn't get dragged into Alex Jones town. And we've maintained this, and I think it's I don't know. I mean, this is really a really great time to be looking.
Well, we've been fighting that since day one, like Alex Jonestown. I mean, who have all of us not come from that? Like, we all kind of came from that, right? Like, we all kind of.
You have to. It's like okay, you leave Normieville, and then you arrive in Alex Jonestown, and then you start drinking that Kool-Aid. And if you get past that, then you might make it to the off-world stage. But most people don't get that far. They stay in Trutherville with all of its orthodoxies, and all of its orthodoxies keep them in, whether it's false flag theory, or other erroneous explanations for what we're seeing, they don't get people out of the box. And so we had to develop over time a methodology for actively consuming media, staying outside of their box. And right now, I think we're with Autohoaxology 101. I think we've consolidated it. So it's beyond the shape of the world. It's
I really like that. And that took a while to build up to auto hoax, because we weren't saying that back in 2015, 2016. That took a while for us to, I don't say us, like you, for you to really get to that. Because it almost got to the tipping point, right? Where it's like, well, we might as well just not, it's all been bullshit. We might as well just not believe and then go from there. And and that's a lot. Same thing with the Luigi thing. It's like we might as well not believe it. And this is really stupid. It's almost so stupid that it's engaging, because like, oh my god, like the bait was sick. Like they really did it. They really did it.
Yeah. Well, hey, I appreciate you calling in. It's great to have informed people, and it's not about believing the same things. It's about having an adherence to the same standards of evidence. And this is actually kind of a philosophical thing. That's why we're not in a rush to believe. We're not reacting. It becomes more philosophical, and that's where it should be. We're not political. And I think that we are advancing a philosophical breakdown of mainstream media that is needed in the deep fake age, where everything can be faked.
Yeah. All right, man, I'll let you go, but I just want to say, like, I've been sitting up here for the last, I don't know, maybe like early afternoon. I seen journalism. I was like, oh, wait for IPS to go live. What does he have to say? Not because I agree with everything you have to say, but it's like, because I know the think tank's going to be here and we're going to be talking about it. So, I appreciate that, man. I'll be here tomorrow and the next day.
Very cool. Well, we got like 350 people on video, another 50 in audio. So we're getting close to our starting numbers, where it was like 400 on the live streams. And this will continue.
Yeah, I remember. I was there, and I'll still be here, bro. So I'll catch you next time you're on.
Awesome. Appreciate it very much. Thank you for the call. Have a great night.
Yeah, have a good night.
All right, another first-time caller. And maybe I had a feeling that when I had that original channel reinstated, we'd begin to see many, many more. ADR says, factoid fun, Tim originated the term flat smack. Yes, we did. Flat smack was when you go into a live stream and you hijack their chats and you start saying things regarding why you think the earth is flat until somebody's face shows that they just came across some alien concept and they're not taking it well. We had an entire lexicon. And it's not that we were necessarily saying that the earth is flat. It's more like research flat earth. If you remember the billboard we did, research flat earth, we said that in particular. I said, let's not say the earth is flat. We need more information. Let's go with research it, because if there's anything there, and there is something there, what is there is the voluminous examples of media fakery and the fact that space is likely some kind of a construct, and we're trying to understand, well, what's the bigger purpose to it? Now I would contend that the space program is and has always been about controlling world view, and that they're not really going into outer space, but they're controlling our inner space. And this would explain why Stanley Kubrick was involved in both Apollo 11 and the JFK assassination and 9/11, because it's not just about faking space, it's about your mental space. And that's what they ultimately are targeting in what we call mind war. I have a new book I'm putting out here very soon. It's a follow-up, more or less, to Autohoaxology 101. Because Autohoaxology is about the methodology. How do you approach news? What are certain axioms you can follow, like fake until proven real? What about fakeability? And these other things that I think are a huge part of breaking down news. But now we're at the point where, how do we explain the purpose of predictive programming and how does it fit into the big picture? And for too long, and this is why we've been talking about simulation theory, for too long people have said the coincidences in the entertainment that correlate with the news are the result of a simulation. That explanation has been a cul-de-sac for 20 years. No one's gone past it. And what we have learned through observation, and what we can predict, because we have a model here, and this is what I'm going to elucidate in our news-bent meta-scripted reality in this new book, is that and this is the best explanation I have, I'm positing this as a model here, is that there is no meaningful distinction between entertainment and news when it comes to mass entertainment. That they're all part of creating a unified worldview, and that our future news events are preceded by propaganda, which is used for conditioning purposes, to get you to identify with a character before he even exists on the world stage, to get you to hate a person before he emerges on the world stage. Trump derangement syndrome was programmed into us before Trump came onto the world stage. If you saw Biff Tannen in Back to the Future, Luigi was sold to us as a righteous class warrior by the Joker or the Riddler even. So we've noticed that not only is there a consistent pattern of future fake transformative psyops preceded by fake news, that psyops imitate the art, but that the timing of releases is so precise that we can definitively say that these various psyops have specific political utility, and that this is 100% predictive programming, that predictive programming is 100% propaganda. It's foreshadowing. It's a literary technique. We can rule out the supernatural and arrive at the truth. Now we know why they fake news. I mean, think about it. How come the right wing doesn't call out fake news on the left? How come the left wing doesn't call out fake news on the right? The left didn't expose the fake Trump shooting. No, a few people said things, but nobody exposed it. Why? Why don't the sides call out each other's fakery? And this is kind of the big reveal, is that the media fakery, the psyops, are done at a level above partisan politics. That ultimately these big staged events are performative. And they do these things because they write our history in advance. I mean, every fake news story in the last 10 years is in the history book. You pick up a history book and read what happened in the last 30 years, it's going to comport with what you saw on mainstream news. Not the conspiracy versions, not the truth. It's going to have the full body count and all the fakery, all the manifestos. It's all real. So I say that fake news becomes fake history in the same way that Napoleon said that history is lies agreed upon. Like, this is an established fact. So our history is being manufactured. Not every single news story, but every single news story of historic import, yeah, it's all manipulated. If they write our history, then that means that they control us. They control our worldview. They control time. Who controls the present controls the future. And that's why I was saying to that one commenter who said, we give the elite too much power. I'm like, no, actually, you're talking about your conquerors here. You're talking about a relatively small group that has conquered billions of minds. I do not think that I'm overstating their power. I'm Not D says, have you checked out Vibes of Cosmos? Oh, I love his work. I used to watch him back when he was Sturgio Studios 10. Great soundtracks. And it's remarkable. I don't know 100% how much of it is explained by his theory here, because it's based on a flat Earth with a black sun beneath the Earth projecting. But what he has found with regard to the cluster of craters correlating to the continents, the idea of a moon as a projection, all very interesting. All right, we have 367 listening. RR says, what's with those flying objects? Okay, there aren't any. They're all drones. One of them was Venus, but there are no anomalous drones over Jersey. Here's Congressman Chris Smith, who wants to give local cops the authority to shoot at planes if they look like drones.
As many of you know, state and local law enforcement is precluded by law from taking more decisive action, which is why DOD must. They are the ones who have the ability and the authority to act. Congress, yes, and the president, yes, need to move quickly to expand state and local authorities, powers. But DOD has it right now. Sheriff Golden wrote me a few days ago requesting legislation to empower the state police to seriously protect at-risk persons and infrastructure, and if necessary, bring down a dangerous drone or drones. I am now drafting that bill and will soon introduce it. I want to thank...
So Congressman Chris Smith. So This doesn't make it real. The drones aren't real. His reaction here about shooting them down is ridiculous. But do you remember there were chemtrail people getting bills passed in Tennessee? Chemtrails don't exist. This is an example of how I describe the world stage is populated by believers who believe what they see on the screen, believe the rumors, but don't independently test things. So they don't know these things. They believe these things. There's a qualitative difference. We don't believe them because we've been informed. We have an informed disbelief. They can't claim to know they're being swarmed by drones. It's merely a belief. So believers and knowers. The programmers operate I'm talking about the programmers of the mainstream media. They operate in a fictional universe. So they write these scripts where these are the parameters, these things exist, and all these things must echo one another. We don't call each other stuff fake. So they insert all kinds of fake things that don't exist into your frame of reference. So at this point, Hell's Angels, fighting Venezuelan gangs, drone swarms over Jersey. No, these things are all fake, but they exist in the minds of people, of course. New Jersey residents threaten to deal with mystery drones themselves if the government doesn't act. And these are the same people, the people who want to shoot at drones, who are making threats to the weathermen. Like they call their meteorologists and say, hey, stop all the hurricanes. You're using chemtrails to create hurricanes. There were 33 bomb threats called in there in Springfield. I mean, it's insane. The world is insane. And we're not the crazy ones. We're the skeptics in the room. We're the ones that are objective in this. Suzette says they're military drones. If they weren't, the military would be on them like white on rice. Yeah, I would argue that in all likelihood, there are no drones, that there's no evidence substantiated. But if there were any, you're right. If they were in the airspace, they would be taken out. Suzette says, Tim, you're not exaggerating their control. Yep. I'm not E says, my man Tim with a shout out. Vought C has made me a believer in the Black Sun. Yeah, I find it intriguing. I'm interested in it. Yeah, there were 33 bomb hoaxes called into, what was it? Springfield. And no, that was not over drones. That was over Haitians eating dogs and cats, which was also fake. I mean, it's unconscionable. The number of influencers spreading fakery for clicks. They're incentivized to lie. The alternative media has less of a conscience about lying than the mainstream media. Because at least you could argue that many of the mainstream media people are just dupes. Whereas truthers are routinely manufacturing fake news and bad memes for the purposes of getting clicks. So let me go ahead and go over this Miles Mathis really quick. He wrote an article, The Healthcare CEO's Murder is Another Fake. He had a list of clues here. What were his clues? I'm just going to gloss over these really quick here. First clue, police released footage immediately to the press, so they were in on the fake. If it were real, they wouldn't air it to the public within hours. This would be considered a snuff film. Yeah, think about that too. I used to work at the county morgue, and the news media doesn't get to release the names of the dead until the next of kin have been notified. And it's not rushed like this. And in a murder case, for example, all these details likely wouldn't be published, especially not the manifesto. Second clue, CEO of big healthcare companies aren't usually walking around the streets of Manhattan like this. Third clue, film looks fake. There's an SUV that hits its brake right as the film starts, suggesting that this is some kind of a marker. The fourth clue, the murder just happened to take place right beneath the street camera aimed at the scene. And the camera is moving, indicating it's handheld, maybe not a street camera. Fifth clue, photos released the next day of the shooter. Why would he have multiple photos of the guy and smiling? What's the point of the hoodie and mask if you're going to walk around posing with them off? Sixth clue, deny, defend, depose on the bullets. He says this stinks of Langley. Eighth clue, seventh clue. Taylor Lorenz. Oh, this one's good. Ex-New York Times Taylor Lorenz came out on the side of the shooter. That's the one who came out and she said that the CEO had it coming. Well, interestingly, and this is confirmation, she started following Luigi, I'm talking about Taylor Lorenz, who commented glowingly about this and was on the side of killing the CEO. She started following the shooter before the shooting. United Healthcare CEO shooter Taylor Lorenz explains op-ed in viral interview. She said the healthcare system is barbaric and needs to be reformed. So if you remember, she just said, of course, I don't believe in murder, but this guy had to get it. You know, I don't believe in murder, but she was on TMZ, which is another clue. TMZ always features crisis actors. But the fact is, Taylor Lorenz, ex-New York Times, confirmed to have been following Mangiano X right before the shooting. 8th clue. Social media inundated with million influencers and commenters all selling it as real. The 9th clue is the decider. Thompson was being investigated by the Justice Department for insider trading, monopolistic practices, and racketeering. So just when he needed to disappear, what a wacky coincidence. So he had possibly a deal. Anyway, this is a piece by Miles Mathis. Great piece. Goes much deeper, but he had his 9 primary clues as to why he presumed it to be fake, and his reasoning is solid. He really gets into the family, the bloodlines. Some areas I don't agree with him on, but fundamentally, Miles Mathis is probably one of the gold standards for auto-hoaxing these big stories. So tonight, the title was These Are Not Drones, and This Is Not a Simulation. Yeah, Lean Dion, the SUV flashed the brake lights moments before the shooting. Action. Daniel Moore says, is it a light show projected in the sky? No, it turns out that there weren't any drones, that the footage is all fake. Most of the videos, like for example, Laura Loomer, right? Laura Loomer, reporter. She's recording or gets a video of LaGuardia Airport. It says, this needs to stop. Like, it's literally a panic. No drones. No substance. All a panic. People want to believe so bad. All right, we'll continue this conversation tomorrow. We'll have some more information from Antarctica. Again, Jeranism's there in Antarctica with Witsit Gets It and McToon. And if the sun sets before tomorrow, where they're at, Earth is flat and not a ball. If it doesn't set, then the flat Earth with the orbiting sun around the North Pole model has some serious problems, but it in no way vindicates media fakery or the science fiction presented to us by the Church of Nasatology. All right, this has been great. We'll continue this tomorrow. I want to say thanks again to all of you for the comments and for supporting the channel. It's going to be interesting times ahead. And I am working on a couple of projects because I want to launch our tabloid at the beginning of the year. But it's one of these things where I have to have a funding mechanism that's consistent. We don't want just a one-off. We want to have a monthly publication. So I have behind me here several folders just full of manuscripts, things that I've written down. And what I'm preparing to do is to follow up Autohoaxology 101 with an explanation of metascript and news bending as the model of what media actually is. And then I have a couple of other projects that I'll be publishing, and I think the royalties from these should be sufficient for me to kick off the tabloid. So I'll be working on that off and on here, but I'm hoping not to miss too many nights. So anyway, last night I missed because I was mostly trying to decide what to focus on, what publications, and a couple of the things I'm working on aren't related to this, but I was into publishing before I started the live streams, and it is a way to build a decent reoccurring royalty stream. And so my objective is to get the IPS Insider out onto the streets for 2025. We have about 380 listeners on video. And at any time, if you're listening and you're just on the audio streams, go to infiniteplane.live. That is a direct link. Or go to ips.monster if you want to get all of the links. We're live on Twitch, DLive, as well as several YouTube channels, Odyssey, and then, of course, all of the audio channels as well. If you go to ips.monster, you can also find a link to join our Discord, as well as our Gilded, where the research is unending. And we are, like I said, we're a fake news wood chipper. Give us a fake news story, and we will chop it up, we'll break it apart, and have something to talk about the next day. And our presupposition here is simply not that everything's fake, but that extraordinary claims need to be considered fake until proven real with evidence. And if the media can't provide evidence, then they're just terrible as journalists. The burden of proof is theirs, not ours. All right, this is Saturna X, Saturn Song. I'll see you all tomorrow.